Everyone remembers their first Pokemon, the one they chose from that special Pokeball that started your journey to becoming champion of your first region. Whether you've been here from the beginning and chose Pokemon number 1 as your starter, or you're new and have picked up the fabulous dancer that is Quaquaval, your first starter Pokemon holds a special place in your heart. But these elusive Pokemon have had the lore hidden for so long that it's time for me to uncover it all for you now! From the first ever Bulbasaur all the way through the newest generation, I'm ready to bring you the hidden lore of every starter Pokemon. Howdy there, I'm Krillic, and I have a lot to share with you today with 9 generations of fully explored Pokemon and 1 generation yet to be completely uncovered. We'll talk about what we know and what predictions there are for the future generation by deeply dissecting those 3 new starters at the end. As such, I'm not wasting any more time as we have not just 30 Pokemon to get through, but all the evolutions we know, putting us at 84 Pokemon in total, not technically counting Megas and GMax, which I am covering in this video, and that's a lot. Luckily, I have Bulbapedia to help me out with this as a starting point, so let's get started. On Bulbasaur's back is a green plant bulb that conceals 2 slender tentacle-like vines, which grow from a seed planted there at birth. The bulb also provides it with the energy through photosynthesis and from the nutrient-rich seeds contained within. Bulbasaur is sometimes seen napping in bright sunlight and could survive for days without eating. It is found in grasslands and forests throughout the Kanto region according to lore and the anime. However, due to its status as a first partner Pokemon, it's hard to come by in the wild and is generally found under the ownership of a trainer. It and many other Pokemon have been seen living in the terrarium of Blueberry Academy. Now, this makes it one of the few locations in which it is naturally found. The only other is in the Let's Go games, which take place a few years after the main events of Red and Blue, and here we find Bulbasaur within Viridian Forest as if to show us that their population is returning in peacetime at least. Though it has been revealed that typically first partner Pokemon such as Bulbasaur are raised by Pokemon breeders to be distributed to new trainers thanks to the Horizons anime. Having been raised by humans from birth, it is regarded as both a rare and well-behaved Pokemon. It is known to be extremely loyal even after being separated for long periods of time, and it has demonstrated a nurturing instinct towards younger, weaker Pokemon, such as using its vines to pick up a crying Pokemon and gently rocking it back and forth through the air while singing a Bulbabai in the anime. Even within the games like Pokemon Snap, we find that Bulbasaur is typically a friendlier species, choosing to live openly with each other and other Pokemon all around. And in Snap, we specifically find it in the Elsewhere Forest within the Summer Path. What's significant about this is that Elsewhere Forest is full of guardian Pokemon, Shiftry, Drampa, Serperior, Ninetales, and so many more. Each and every one of the Pokemon serving to protect each other, and especially protect younger Pokemon. And here we see that Bulbasaur is noted to actually be weaker and in need of help so it can eventually evolve. One of the most active Bulbasaur we see plays with Pancham and is guarded by Drampa. You can choose to throw apples at Drampa and it just won't react, but throw apples at Bulbasaur or Pancham and it will get incredibly angry. My house may have burned down soon after I found this out for no apparent reason whatsoever. And while we don't see any of Bulbasaur's evolutions in this area, we do see a Venusaur in Funja jungle, meaning that this is a breeding and hatching ground for Bulbasaur to be born, stay safe, and raised until they depart into the greater area outside, and I just love that so much. I didn't quite realize that when I made my video on the complete ecology of Pokemon Snap, and now it just kind of blows my mind how great that fits in. Then again, that game is also so large that I would need an 8-hour video to cover every single tiny interaction that happens. Now, Bulbasaur's bulb has been seen to flash blue when it is ready to evolve, but if it doesn't want to, it struggles to resist the transformation. Actually, in other media, it is stated that resisting your evolution can be painful for the Pokemon. Many Bulbasaur gather every year in a hidden garden in Kanto to evolve into Ivysaur in a ceremony led by a Venusaur, which makes one of 2 ceremonies that I'm currently aware of that are held by grass-type Pokemon. The other would be when Victreebel helps Weepinbell evolve. I'm not entirely sure why this evolution ritual even exists within these 2 lines of Pokemon, but we really don't see anything like this in any other kind of Pokemon ever to my knowledge, and especially not with any other starter. Now, Bulbasaur's vines are long and strong enough to allow it to grab the branches of trees and pull itself up to reach berries, if it so chooses to eat them. In Pokemon Sleep, it sits still and basks in sunny spots during its sleep, possibly trying to absorb nutrients from its seed to grow larger. It is very interesting that the very first Pokemon we are presented with, at least in the Pokédex, is a hybrid frog plant creature that throws in soar within its name as though it were a dinosaur of sorts. Of course, thanks to its short legs, stout appearance, and ear-like protrusions on its head, it makes it resemble horned frogs. According to Ken Sugimori and Atsuko Nishida, the latter designed Bulbasaur working backward from Venusaur, meaning that Bulbasaur was the last of its evolutionary line to have been designed, and was also directly based on Venusaur's design. Sometimes you have to write your ending and work backwards from there. I believe it was also confirmed that Oda does that with One Piece, creating a scene he wants to reach at the end and then writing to that point, which honestly works incredibly well with writing, art, and a lot more. It lets you have your final vision in place so that way you can build up to it. Find those qualities that would lead you to that end point. Of course, then, moving on top of Bulbasaur's back is a bulb, which you would find as the starting point of many plants, such as tulips and lilies, but not of what flower Bulbasaurs would eventually grow into. Then again, despite its name being Bulbasaur in English, it is known as the Seed Pokemon, a category it strangely shares with Sunkern and no other. Meanwhile, in Japanese, we get the name Fushigidane, which can be broken down in a number of ways. From Fushigi, which means strange or mysterious, while also having the Americanized Fushigi ball from those commercials forever ago. It also has Tane for seed, as well as Fushigi Dane, which means isn't it strange? Pretty fitting for one of the first Pokemon the public would be introduced to, a pocket monster that serves as a cute bridge between animals, plants, real-life inspirations, and whimsical wonder, with only a simple phrase to connect it of, isn't it strange? In what I assume would be said not in disgust, but rather fascination. Bulbasaur has had such a cultural impact that even the country of Niue has released a coin with Bulbasaur on it. In addition, while it is not considered to be part of the inspiration for the name of Bulbasaurus, a genus of Dicynodonts, it has been noted that the similarities may not be entirely coincidental. And honestly, when you look at Dicynodonts from the front, they're a little bit ugly, but they do look a bit like what I would expect a Bulbasaur to look like in real life. And you know what? As we go along, I'll also let you know which starter I picked in every single generation, and Bulbasaur was the starter I picked in Kanto, but it wasn't my first ever starter. As it evolves into Ivysaur, the weight of the plant prevents it from running fast and standing on its hind legs, forcing its legs to grow sturdy. When its flower is ready to bloom, it gives off a distinct, sweet-smelling aroma and starts swelling. Ivysaur will also start spending more time in sunlight in preparation for its upcoming evolution. Pretty simple equation all in all. The Pokemon gets a heavier bud, and as a result it has to become physically stronger in order to carry it. Gotta get those strong legs, mass moves mass. What's strange though is that the bud does look like a Rafflesia would when it is budding, but it sits atop what looks more like a palm tree fit with fronds, especially when it evolves. Rafflesia don't form structures like these, but you might consider that since real Rafflesias are parasites that attach to other plant structures, that this would be its own way of attaching to Ivysaur. Of course, it isn't parasitic to this line of Pokemon based on everything we know, and in fact, exposure to sunlight adds to the strength of both Ivysaur and its plant. It's a mutualistic relationship. As shown in Pokemon Sleep, Ivysaur is known to sleep in sunny spots while undergoing its photosynthesis process. Researchers can't decide if it's awake or asleep during this process, and despite being noted to live in plains, there isn't a single natural spawn for Ivysaur. I also find it weird that it would be said to live in plains when we see Bulbasaur and Venusaur in such wooded, dense areas with light filtering through. But it seems like the reason Ivysaur would differ in habitat is just because it is prioritizing getting as much sun as possible without needing to move around. This makes sense to me, as the flower itself isn't going to be conducting photosynthesis, but rather the massive leaves will be, and maybe its actual skin, since it has that bluish-green hue to it. But there's no confirmation of that, and it's probably just that color because, you know, it's a frog. And I believe albinism in frogs is one thing, but then there is a whole other situation where frogs, instead of being green, will be blue. But now I think it's safe to move on to Venusaur, who uses its flower to catch the sun's rays to convert them into energy, which causes the flower to become more vibrant along with a nutritious diet. The flower has a gynoecium at the center for a female Venusaur, which is effectively a female portion of a plant. Something I found out that people don't really know is that there are a lot of plants that grow both male and female parts. Sometimes those parts are close together, other times they are spread further apart to the point where you'd think it was an entirely different plant. The flower, then, with Venusaur, releases a soothing scent that attracts Pokemon and calms emotions and can heal the human heart. This scent becomes stronger after a rainy day, and this smell is very significant and can be explained thoroughly through real-world information. The reason plants smell more after rain is due to the release of geosmin, a compound produced by soil-dwelling bacteria, particularly Streptomyces. When rain falls on dry soil, it disturbs these bacteria, releasing geosmin into the air. The compound, I'm probably not saying that word right, I realize. Oh well. This compound is responsible for the earthy scent often associated with rain. The human nose is sensitive to geosmin, detecting it at concentrations as low as 5 parts per trillion. This sensitivity contributes to the pleasant experience of rain, as the aroma of geosmin can be detected even in those small amounts. The presence of it is also linked to the survival of these bacteria, as it helps attract soil organisms that are beneficial to plant growth. In other words, Venusaur may be attracting mates, if not at least attracting pollinators in the world, which is shown in Pokemon Snap through special interactions. I will also note that when we look at Rafflesia in real life, the way that they get them to pollinate each other is by having a horrible, nasty stench, very opposite to what Venusaur has. This stench actually attracts flies to go inside of it, and as the flies are getting their fill of whatever they're really looking for, they end up having pollen put right onto them. And so, when they leave and are eventually attracted to another Rafflesia, they go in and they are pollinating the other Rafflesia. Now, Venusaur is at its strongest in the summertime when there is much more light to absorb. In the episode Bulbasaur's Mysterious Garden, it has demonstrated the ability to manipulate nature, doing so through releasing many vines from its back. As shown in Pokemon Sleep, it releases a soothing fragrance while sleeping. From here on out, I will say though, just to save time, if I don't give it habitat, assume that the Pokemon does not have a natural spawn within the main games. But if you thought that that was all, as I stated earlier, you have another thing coming, because we have Megas and GMax forms to talk about with every single Pokemon who does have one. And in order to support its flower, which has grown larger due to Mega Evolution, Venusaur's back and legs have become stronger. And honestly, that's all we get. But at least the Rafflesia Arnoldi grew more. It's just strange that it would choose to grow taller rather than gaining a larger flower, as we'll see with its GMax form. The reason for this might just be because it's trying to get more sunlight to superpower its attacks, grow taller, outcompete other plants in the area, and get your fill of sunlight to blast solar beams at your foes. And when it does GMax, said flower covers the entirety of Venusaur like a lily pad blanket covering a frog in water hiding from the sun. It attacks with its thick vines, which are powerful enough to topple down a 10-story building. Its flower can similarly spread enough pollen to resemble a volcanic eruption. Breathing in this pollen can cause uncontrollable sneezing, and inhaling large amounts can even cause fainting. However, this pollen also promotes plant growth in areas where it lands. To be fair, any amount of pollen, especially when there's enough of it, can cause irritation to anybody. That's why you gotta sneeze, you gotta get it out of your body, it's not supposed to be there. But bigger flower, longer vines, more pollen, nice and simple. Though that last part might still throw you off because it doesn't promote the growth of the Bulbasaur line. It explicitly states that it promotes plant growth in general. And this is because many, if not all plant Pokemon that release pollen and seeds don't just release their own seeds. They release a conglomerate of seeds and pollen that helps the flora throughout the world of Pokemon. The first time I realized this was when I looked at Eldegoss within Pokemon Snap, and it explicitly states that it spreads all sorts of seeds everywhere. So I guess this is just what happens when you have Pokemon that belong in the Grass Egg group. A fire burns at the tip of Charmander's slender tail, which has blazed there since Charmander's birth. The flame can indicate Charmander's health and mood, burning brightly when the Pokemon is strong, weakly when it is exhausted, wavering when it is happy, and blazing when it is enraged. These emotions depicted through flame, or health through flame, is pretty consistent across not only fire-type Pokemon, but also any other Pokemon with elemental abilities. This is actually what the Pokemon watchers like Tracy look out for. Think of it this way, if Flamethrower is used and it is weaker than normal against a neutral Pokemon, even if it just used it, not against anyone or anything, then it means that there's something wrong with the Pokemon using Flamethrower. Whether it's the mood or the physical condition is an entirely different thing to figure out, but it's a good starting point. It's an indicator, effectively, and then you can apply that to all other Pokemon for their respective moves and types. What also helps is that while not every Pokemon has this, fire Pokemon have a fire organ, electric Pokemon have an electric organ, so on and so forth. These organs help generate and store their type of elemental energy, so when we look at nurses within Pokemon, they may even be able to test the elemental organs for health, which is pretty cool to think about in my opinion. It is said that Charmander would die if its flame were to go out. However, if the Pokemon is healthy, the flame will continue to burn even if it gets a bit wet and is said to steam in the rain. So don't worry, Charmander is not always as weak as it might seem, but this means that babies and sick Charmander might struggle in the wild without a bit of help. They can be found in hot, mountainous areas, which lines up with seeing it in Alola on Route 3 using the Island Scan, then Routes 3 and 4, and Rock Tunnel within the Let's Go games. In Pokemon Snap, we find them within Volucha's volcano, where they not only call out to each other, play, and generally interact, but will defend themselves from predatory Pokemon. Though if there's a massive threat that disturbs them, then Charizard will arrive to save them, making it so that this line of Pokemon is strongly held together as a pack of sorts, and may extend into a communal type of behavior between packs. As shown in Pokemon Sleep, Charmander is known to sleep while curled up. Supposedly, it draws warmth from the flame on its tail. During quiet nights, the sounds of its flame can be heard by listening carefully while Charmander sleeps. It's actually strange to consider that idea that a fire-type Pokemon can create fire that then warms its body. You'd expect their bodies to just immediately be warmer, but that might not always be the case, as we see with others who would get burned just for us touching them. Now, Charmander's design was based on Charizard in such a way that it would be surprising to see it evolving into Charizard. And to be entirely fair, if I knew nothing about Pokemon, lived in that world, and I saw this cute little lizard evolving into a fire-breathing dragon, I'd be a little surprised. Now, Charmander is a combination of Char, to burn, and Salamander, as stated in the January 1999 Pokemon Journal on the official Game Freak website. Alternatively, in a 2016 interview with Tsutokazu Ishihara by Inside, Charmander is stated to be a combination of charcoal and Salamandra, a genus of salamander including 4 species of fire salamander. In folklore and mythology, salamanders are often thought of as fire spirits capable of surviving in extreme heat or flames. This does lead me to the big question as to why it is considered a dragon but isn't a dragon type until we get those mega forms, and by those I mean the mega form. And it's partially from this salamander idea, and partially from it still being part of the dragon egg group, of which there are many reptile Pokemon that are not dragons in this group, which include Melodic, Magikarp, and Helioptile, though dragon can be translated when you look all the way back into literally just huge serpents or giant sea fish. So the term is actually way more vague than we make it in the modern day, but that's language and it transforms, so what do you know? What's important is that with the Dragon Egg group, we get ancient creatures, reptiles, and the like, and who knows, maybe one of these days I'll finally start making my own Tree of Life video, but once I finally start it, it has to be truly perfect. Moving on, Charmeleon has a vicious, hot-headed nature and will constantly seek out opponents. Strong opponents actually excite it, causing it to spout bluish-white flames that torch its surroundings. It even becomes more aggressive when it sees a challenge and will not be satisfied with itself until it wins. Sometimes it will even go as far as tormenting others into fighting, or during the fight itself, it will torment them. In Pokemon Sleep and in the anime, it is known to sleep with a laid-back posture, using its hands as a pillow. Its fierce fervor disappears in this moment. Nothing too crazy to talk about here, but I can say that it and Quilava have the same base stats and in the same distribution alongside their evolutions, which is a bit weird since I always associated Charizard with being more physical, while Typhlosion I saw as a more special attacker, but at least by stat spread, that is not factual. Also, take that with a grain of salt because, you know, I didn't actually look at their move lists when I said that. I have not properly learned competitive. I can have a mean Pokemon fight with randoms, but building a team is not a thing for me, usually. Charizard flies in search of powerful opponents to battle, and its fire will burn hotter as it gains experience. Its fiery breath can melt boulders and massive glaciers, and has been known to cause forest fires accidentally. This makes Charizard a great way to introduce natural forest fires into the world and renew the land itself. Because even though fires can be incredibly disastrous, there are plenty of different plants that benefit from it. For example, fir trees that only allow their cones to burst open when temperatures reach hot enough to melt the sap, keeping them closed. Obviously, constant fires are terrible, and the fire season, as it's called, is a tragedy covered up by slapping the word season onto it to make it seem like humanity isn't destroying the earth. But whatever, I've honestly ranted about that enough on other videos, and I don't feel like doing that here, not this early. Though Charizard's fiery breath is hot, it never turns it on any opponent weaker than itself. In the episode Charizard's Burning Ambitions, it is established that only a weak Charizard would show off its power. So this works twofold. On one side, Charizard will still hunt other Pokemon, but isn't going to be a bully to other creatures. On the other side, when we have weaker animals in the real world, they will also yell and roar as loud as possible in order to seem intimidating. This works as a tactic for all sorts of animals, weak or strong, so they don't have to fight, but usually the louder, more obnoxious ones are trying to seem tough, so any threats don't take the risk. It's like the alpha males in society that talk about eating raw meat or how they can bench press you, when in reality their egos are as easily poppable as a balloon. Charizard's wings can carry it an altitude of 4,600 feet, 1,400 meters, and an illustrated book of pocket monsters notes that its droppings were found on Mount Fuji, implying it could fly thrice as high. Pokemon poop deniers still come at me in the comments here and there, and I don't know what else to do anymore when they just ignore information like that. In the episode Charizard Chills, it was shown that Charizard is vulnerable to having its tail flame going out in the same way as Charmander, as Ash Ketchum warns his Charizard to not let his flame go out. However, the side story episode, Those Darn Electabuzz, showed that Charizard can swim underwater, with Pokemon Origins further showing that the flame on the tip of its tail can still keep burning underwater. And I'd like to imagine that this is all dependent on the strength and health of the Charizard, similarly to its previous forms. If the flame is constantly generated and hot enough, then it would instantly evaporate water and prevent any risk of being put out whatsoever. A weaker or damaged Charizard might be in danger if put into these strange situations, but in the Origins episode, it was the moment right before Mega Evolution that it was in that water, which drives the idea that Charizard was prepared, being filled with Mega Energy, allowing it to ensure that its fire doesn't go out despite being completely submerged. Now, they typically inhabit mountains and valleys, such as the Terrific Valley in Johto. However, Charizard can also live in volcanoes, forming pacts with other members of its family, including Charmander, as we see in Snap. In Pokemon Sleep, as well as media like the animated series, Charizard is known to sleep in an incredibly relaxed position, as it is very confident in its power. A Charizard sleeping flat on its back may be an indicator of that Charizard being especially strong. What's fun about this is that this is a trait often expressed in real-life animals. In particular, one of my dogs, Jaeger, will flop onto his back, legs in the air, daily, showing just how comfortable, happy, and safe he feels here at home. Unless, you know, he is actually just insulting me by saying I'm weak, but I guess me picking him up over my shoulder and squatting with him isn't proof enough for him, but that's okay. I love him anyway. I don't need to prove anything to him. Even though Charizard originally couldn't learn the move Fly, Pokemon trainers have been shown riding Charizard in official artwork dating back to 1997 on trading cards. Ash himself was shown riding his Charizard already in the second season of the anime. Eventually in Pokemon Yellow, it gained the capability to learn Fly and has since been frequently depicted as a Pokemon able to carry people on its back to fly them to distant areas. In Alola, Charizard is a ride Pokemon called Charizard Glide, being used by Alolans to fly around the region or make deliveries. Then we reach the point where Charizard is fueled with so much Mega power that its Eastern Dragon origins are drawn out even more in its designs within its X and Y forms. I'm still amazed a Z form hasn't been released, but I am okay with that. When in its X form, the overwhelming power that fills its entire body causes it to turn black and creates intense blue flames. by the standards of good old science, this would mean that the flames would be at a temperature range of 1400 Celsius to 1650 Celsius, or 2552 Fahrenheit to 3000 Fahrenheit. This is hot enough to melt stainless steel, but not quite meet the temperature needed to melt titanium. Meanwhile, Mega Y's Dex states its bond with its trainer is the source of its power. It boasts speed and maneuverability greater than that of a jet, which feels very lackluster. All Mega Pokemon gain power from their bond with their trainer, and I kinda assumed Charizard could already reach these levels, but how about we try to put this into perspective? Because if this is meant to tell us that Charizard Y outclasses every single jet that man has ever created, then that is a huge deal, putting it at a speed faster than the NASA X-43A Scramjet, which is the fastest jet-powered aircraft that reaches Mach 9.6, which is 9.6 times faster than the speed of sound, and is clocked at 7,000 miles per hour. Alternatively, if they mean a jet that people can actually be inside of while flying, then it would be faster than the Lockheed SR-7A Blackbird, which reaches speeds over Mach 3.2 over 2,200 miles per hour. Either of these scenarios are absolutely absurd, and whether it's true or not is irrelevant. As we can see, Mega Y Charizard is visually sleeker, with wings on its arms for greater maneuverability and control. But we are still not done yet with Charizard, because now we have its GMax form. Due to being enhanced by GMax energy, the fire within Charizard's body has become much stronger, burning hotter than 3,600 degrees Fahrenheit, 2,000 Celsius, and continuing to rise in temperature when GMax Charizard roars. When using its signature move, GMax Wildfire, it launches its colossal fiery wings in the shape of a bird, which circles opponents while continuously scorching them with the flames even hotter than magma. Mind you, the heat of magma is a range that at the hottest it's 1300 Celsius or 2372 Fahrenheit, which by those numbers effectively makes Mega Energy canonically a greater source of power for Charizard to use at the very least. The difference then is the sheer volume of fire that GMax Charizard is releasing, making it potentially a much more instant threat for greater crowds. Either way, I don't think I want to be unprotected in a battle involving Charizard, though that kind of goes without saying for any Pokemon. And before we continue, I do just want to say thank you for watching. I've been meaning to cover all the starter partner Pokemon for a long time, since they hardly get mentioned in any of my deep dives, and it's just fun to talk about them. If you're new, make sure you subscribe for more in-depth content, and even leave a comment with your own thoughts or each of these starter Pokemon that you chose in the game. The best comment of the week gets highlighted at the end of the video, plus comments help boost the reach of a video alongside hyping the video. Lastly, if you'd like to go the extra mile, become a member for as little as $3 a month on here or Patreon. You get behind the scenes info, members only videos, and normal videos early. It just goes a long way ultimately. But enough of that. Once again, thank you, and on with the video. Squirtle's shell is a useful tool. It can withdraw into its shell for protection or to sleep, as you would expect of a turtle. The grooved, rounded shape helps to reduce water resistance, allowing the Pokemon to swim at high speeds. It can spray foamy water from its mouth with great accuracy. They're noted to be scarce in the wild, although it can be found around small ponds and lakes. It can also be found residing around rivers in mountainous regions. In the episode Beach Blank Out Blastoise, Squirtle is shown to be found living on secluded islands with other members of their evolutionary line, led by Blastoise. Sharpedo is noted to be a natural predator of Squirtle, which is, once again, shown in Snap until a Lapras saves the day. And in Pokemon Sleep, it is known to sleep by withdrawing its limbs and head into its shell to protect itself from any threats. They are noted to hunt for prey, which isn't shocking for a turtle at all, though in particular when we look at its visual characteristics, we can attach it better to the water tortoise, otherwise known as the terrapin, which includes the very blue color we would see in a diamondback terrapin as an example. This entire line also has relations to the Minogame, which is a turtle that lived for over 10,000 years, made more parents with Wartortle, and grew a tail made of seaweed. The Minogame would also play a massive role in the inspiration for Terrapagos and its history. Squirtle, in specific, is a combination of squirt, to spray, and turtle. The name was chosen in apparent reference to water guns, which were thought of as cool toys for children. Squirt is, of course, also a slang term for small child. Moving on, Wartortle's tail symbolizes longevity and good luck. making this Pokemon popular with the elderly. I guess living for 10,000 years does provide its benefits. Because it is larger than Squirtle and has a larger shell, Wartortle has a more difficult time walking on land and keeping its balance in the water. It moves its furry ears and tail as both rudders and balancing rods to maintain balance while swimming at high speeds. Air can be stored in its fur for extended underwater diving, making them like little propulsion devices. It hides in water when hunting and emerges to surprise its prey, and as shown in Pokemon Sleep, it is known to sleep with its body tucked into its shell while remaining wary of threats. It leaves its long, furry tail poking out a bit to feel out its surroundings in case of any danger does approach, making it work very similarly to any other animal's whiskers or antennae. There is other artwork of it without the ears being fluffy, and honestly it just feels super cursed because it's just the same color as its skin. What's also strange though is that we get another turtle shell with wings, which might just be because turtles look like they're flapping their arms like wings underwater, making another easy tie to the Mario blue shell. The powerful cannons on Blastoise's back can produce water blasts that can pierce steel and concrete and be used for high-speed charges and propelling itself in the air. Super multifaceted. The speed of Blastoise's charges is similar to the force of a rocket. It makes itself heavy to withstand these powerful blasts and crush its opponents. Always remember, the force you exert is a force that your body also has to be able to handle, or otherwise your body will break. Now, Blastoise is capable of flying by propelling itself with water from the back openings of its shell, which we not only see in the manga as it carries our protagonists and is the primary partner of Green, but also within Snap as it saves a Squirtle that we totally don't put into danger ourselves by throwing an apple at it. Yeah. As shown in Pokemon Sleep, it is known to sleep soundly while protected by its tough shell. It has also been sleeping, or seen sleeping, with its belly exposed on very rare occasions, meaning once again that it is feeling completely secure in its surroundings and has quickly fallen asleep. As it transforms into Mega Blastoise, it has a more aggressive disposition due to its increased strength. The power of its main cannon is equivalent to that of a tank gun at minimum, and possesses a blast range of over 6 miles or 10 kilometers. And to think that it tried to wash a car, only to just completely wreck it. Blastoise tried its best, but hopefully they have good insurance. Its strengthened legs and back enable it to withstand the recoil from its own blasts, but it can also use its arm cannons to further support itself by using moves like Ice Beam to latch itself to the ground before firing a massive attack, such as what we see during its burst attack in Pokken Tournament. Side note, the Pokemon moves go so absolutely hard in Pokken. It is so absurd how unreasonably well animated they are and how well they show some of the qualities of Pokemon we do not see elsewhere. Now, we're gonna get through GMax, before we explain all 3 of them in one perfect comparison. Now, GMax Blastoise can adapt to any situation using various cannon combinations. It is not very good at precision shooting, so instead of aiming its attacks, it prefers to overwhelm its opponent by launching dynamic, powerful torrents from its cannons. Why be accurate when you can just barrage your enemy? That is the point of a number of sub-automatic or automatic firearms. According to one legend, its main cannon is so staggeringly powerful that it can blast holes through mountains. GMax Blastoise can also individually align the 12 cannons surrounding its main cannon to attack in any direction. In this form, it has effectively become a battleship through and through, but if we rewind the clock, we can trace a potential inspiration for all 3 of these designs back to an armored fighting vehicle that was inspired by a turtle shell created by Leonardo da Vinci. The whole idea was that it would be a perfectly impenetrable fortress that could slowly move through enemy lines while laying waste to all enemies. Because of course you want to minimize casualties on your own side of the war, and the easiest thing to do is imagine up a perfect defense and a perfect offense. Lastly, it is strangely considered the shellfish Pokemon in English despite being a turtle, but at least in Japanese direct translation, it is translated as the shell Pokemon, which remedies everything. Time for my very first starter Pokemon and what I would consider my partner Pokemon if I was truly a Pokemon professor, Chikorita. Otherwise known as horseradish, even though it isn't based on horseradishes. Oops. Look, I love this girl so much that I have stickers of it and have completed Heart Gold and Legends ZA with her alone. And I'll tell you right now, that second one was terrible, and I'll never do it again, but I will make a short video on that. Nevertheless, Chikorita has a gentle personality and is docile by nature. The leaf on its head emits a pleasant, sweet aroma, which can soothe even battling Pokemon. Chikorita has also been using it to sense the temperature and humidity of the area around itself, checking for a nice, warm place for it to sunbathe, or, as mentioned in Pokemon Sleep, to sleep in. What's strange is that the only place where we can find an encounter of wild Chikorita is within Wild Zone 20 of Legend ZA, which implies that Chikorita had some sort of mass migration event, which isn't implausible, not just because of ZA basically telling us that directly, but also because Pokopia has a mass migration of Pokemon across regions, amongst other lore things that I will not spoil right now. And yes, I have been enjoying Pokopia, and I genuinely love it. I'll be making at least 2 videos on it, but I want to keep playing it thoroughly on my live streams here and on Twitch. Hint, hint. Back on track though, I'm also ignoring the Grand Underground within the Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl games for encounters as well, because those get really messy and are primarily there for mechanics sake to my understanding. Its name though is a combination of chicory, a flowering plant, and ita, the feminine form of, Spanish suffix for something small or young. The chicory makes a bit more sense when we look at its coloration and compare it to its shiny form, though the flower we see from it doesn't quite match as it evolves. Although chicory is also known for its soothing properties, it is often used in various culinary and medicinal applications, which plays incredibly well into Chikorita's known qualities more and more as it evolves. What also becomes more apparent is how it is inspired by sauropods, those lovely long-necked dinosaurs. More than this though, its shape and appearance also alludes to that of a pear or a Belgian endive, which is a type of chicory. Buds around its neck make it look like a necklace, adding a feminine touch to the design overall, and since people hate women for some reason, they usually hate poor little Chikorita, but it's okay. She's become a staple and favorite before ZA, and it's only become better ever since its release. Evolving into Bayleef, the leaves around its neck contain a small tree shoot inside, which emits a stimulant, spicy aroma. The fragrance has a combination of energizing, stimulating, and healing effects, which, as mentioned in Sleep, or Pokemon Sleep, makes even Pokemon that sleep near Bayleef feel invigorated. Although I will note in some Pokédex entries, it actually makes the individual Pokemon or human want to fight. I'm not 100% sure. I want to roll the dice with that one, because either my sick grandmother will start feeling better, or she'll start swinging on everyone and their mothers like that one grandmother from the Madagascar movies. Now that it's developed more, it is thought that it is inspired by the Apatosaurus, which also translates to deceptive lizard, as if it and Bayleef were tax evaders, deceptive lizards. With its name being Bayleef, it seems clear that the bay laurel would be an inspiration for it, as its oil is also used for healing and is a stimulant within aromatherapy. It also looks dead on the same when we look at the separated leaves. Even the dried version matches perfectly once again for our shiny coloration. And while I could talk about all the beta designs for Pokemon like Bayleef and others, I think I'll rather point you towards the Pokemon video all about that demo that was shown off at Space World in 1997. Meganium's flower around its neck emits a soothing, refreshing aroma, and its breath has the power to restore the life of withered plants. Basically the opposite of anyone else's breath in the morning, which some people might call dragon's breath. I'm some people, by the way, and I realize how funny of a coincidence it is that Meganium would gain the fairy typing as a counter to this, though I am 100% sure that that is unrelated. Now, Meganium can use its fragrance to weaken the fighting spirits of opposing Pokemon, causing them to even sleep peacefully side by side with it. The flower's calming effects appear to extend to being something of a sleep aid. Give me the sleep aid. Let me sleep a perfect 68 hours, and then let me get back to work, please. Now, Bayleef does tend to be very docile and has been portrayed as a peacemaker, at least within the episode Odd Pokemon Out. And now let's circle back to the idea of a plant being revived by Meganium's breath, because while there's no evidence that a fragrance can actually literally revive something, there are fragrances that work on all forms of creatures and even plants to stimulate the individual. And no, not like that. Don't think of it that way. Think of it this way. Plants are able to release aromas that are effectively chemicals. These chemicals have been used to not only attract the types of insects that they prefer, but tomatoes can even cause caterpillars to cannibalize each other. So when we put the idea of plants encouraging each other to heal and grow through aromatic chemicals, it makes everything feel a lot more interconnected and is pretty plausible, thus explaining why Meganium has this ability. Its flower seems to be based on a type of hybrid daylily with ruffled edges, and its long neck makes it similar to the Titan Aurum. It likely draws inspiration from geraniums, as suggested by its name, Meganium. Its design may have also been influenced by the idea of the Acanthosaurus, an ancient plant whose fossils were once believed to belong to a dinosaur. Pokemon does this a lot, honestly. They take something that wasn't true and say, hey, what if it was? What if we just create something that could have existed in another universe and place it in Pokemon? This results in them creating the opposites of real-life phenomena, events, and creatures without counting the many different Pokemon inspired by yokai. Then we get into its goofy Mega that I love. Mega Meganium can detect changes in the weather with its feelers, allowing it to seek out places where it can photosynthesize more efficiently, which leads me to something that is very interesting. I have to find more proof of it, but there is proof within the manga of at least Hertier's evolution, Stoutland, also retaining the ability to sense subtle changes in its surroundings. So, knowing that this is something with Meganium and Stoutland, I want to find all the consistent ideas, enough hopefully to make a video on this, and the idea that compounded abilities of Pokemon are retained through their evolutions. And it would make a lot of sense, but I wonder how many of them actually do it. And when they do, how much more powerful do they actually become by retaining these abilities? Back on track, accordingly, Mega Meganium's 4 flowers store up massive amounts of solar energy, producing a fragrant substance that, depending on the dosage inhaled, can either calm down or cause agitation on those who smell it. The accumulated solar power also allows Mega Meganium to unleash powerful solar beams instantly from its 4 flowers, a move given the moniker Mega Soul Cannon. I'm a little sad that I did not get a literal signature move called Mega Soul Cannon, but I can't complain too much. It was the saving grace of my first playthrough, as Meganium became so much more powerful within ZA, especially in the physical sense, as if the tinkiness of this line wasn't enough. Now, due to its larger body, its physical capabilities have been improved, with it now excelling in close combat and trampling foes when its solar beams prove ineffective. Mega Evolution is said to have also made its fighting style bolder, but this has also led it to becoming more careless in certain situations. The way the flowers are layered honestly makes me think of how a laser machine would be created in fantasy settings, becoming whiter and whiter as you get closer to the base of it, where more power would then be stored before firing off. Actually, now that I think about it, it definitely seems like if Mega Meganium gets animated, it will have different animations for its attacks, and we'll get it looking like a massive laser beam sweeping over things with its solar beam, with its head completely engulfed by the light, and I am all for that. Now, why does it gain the fairy typing, you might ask? Well, there's no solid ideas, but you could consider the art of flower arrangement, its connection with healing and nature, which is often associated with fairy types, and its antennae do look like butterfly antennae, which we see Valerie as a great character motif for butterflies, as the fairy type gym leader, as a simple tie here. And before we do move on to the next one, I just have to say one more time how much I love the Chikorita line. Like, don't get me wrong, Gengar is my favorite with Suicune and Ogerpon to follow, but like Chikorita became such a massive part of the channel and the community culture in streams and the Discord, and she just started out as just soloing that Heart Gold run, and since then has just become this staple over and over again. And with ZA bringing her back, it just felt amazing to share something so simple and stupid and fun as a little Chikorita named Horseradish being powerful enough to conquer massive threats without even meaning to. She just wanted to go for a walk. Cyndaquil is capable of defending itself using flames that burst from heat spots on its back, and the fire grows more powerful as it becomes angry or defensive. Its firepower is described as being tremendously powerful, in fact, though if it is tired, the flames are not able to burn properly. It is timid by nature and often curls into a ball when threatened. Due to this, it often prefers staying hunched over. As mentioned in Pokemon Sleep, it is known to usually sleep while curled up, basically being in that defensive position, protecting those internal organs better while allowing its flames to spurt out easier towards its surroundings. On rare occasions, it will spout flames from its back while sleeping, which ties back to the idea of it feeling comfortable or uncomfortable. You can also find it in Sun and Moon, once again, with an island scan. Now this does get weird because Cyndaquil is called the Fire Mouse Pokemon, but it is way more akin to the Echidna, with traits of Tenrex such as having a long snout and having little to no tail. Then between its eyes and the quills of fire, you could compare it to a porcupine. But despite all of that, because of its title of Fire Mouse and its Japanese name being Hinoarashi, you can directly tie it to the Hinazumi, which is its species name in Japanese as well and relates to a mythical fire mouse that lives in volcanoes. Their fur is said to be completely immune to fire and would be made to create fireproof fabrics, with their myth originating in Shenyi Jing and appearing in things like the Tale of the Bamboo Cutter, which itself ties to Kaguya Hime, the bamboo princess, who would then inspire many other Pokemon in its own right, such as Celesteela. Now, here's a secret between you and me. While Pokemon Crystal was my first game, and I claim up and down that Chikorita was my first ever starter, there's a 50-50 chance that Cyndaquil was actually my first ever starter, and not Chikorita, as I remember picking between those two a lot. No offense, Totodile, you're cute, but I have typically not found myself attached to water types for some reason. Despite all that, I definitively remember playing through a big chunk of the game, or a larger chunk of the game, with the Chikorita line overall, and that's why I've stuck to that story. Before a battle, Quilava turns its back so its flames face its opponent, so it's recommended to stay back if it shows you its back. It battles using these intense flames in combination with gusts of superheated air. Its own fur is non-flammable, which protects it from other fire attacks, tying back to the myth of the Hinoarashi. As mentioned in Pokemon Sleep, its flames on its back blaze brightly while it continues to sleep, keeping it defended. Kind of feels though like a problem if you're trying to stay safe and away from other Pokemon, but apparently the superheated air also keeps foes away, making this a defense mechanism for while it sleeps. Also to clarify, if you're trying to stay safe in the sense of not being spotted. And even if something does get close, Quilava is noted to be very nimble. Its category as the volcano Pokemon is shared not only with its evolution, but also Entei, that old legendary beast, which is a bit funny to me since this is just another instance of a fire Pokemon having legendary status, similar to how Arcanine is categorized literally as the legendary Pokemon. Jeff Callis, who assisted in the naming of many Generation 2 Pokemon, suggested the English name for Quilava. According to Callis, he suggested the name because Nintendo and the Pokemon Company wanted a Pokemon for every letter of the alphabet. Big fan of that, I have to say. I would be focusing on that super hard, and then, just to mess with people, completely skip a letter, just because I can. Quilava's body is similar to that of animals in the Quilava's body is similar to that of animals in the Cuculidae family, particularly due to the fur on its upper body being significantly darker than that on its underbelly. Also, if I said that word wrong, I apologize. I had to look it up, I'm not gonna lie. This is also an example of counter shading, often used as a camouflage adaptation in many different creatures. However, the pattern distribution and shape of Quilava's flames closely resemble the quills and crest of the crested porcupine, especially in its earlier sprites, as well as those of a lowland streaked Tenric. And god, that thing looks really unfriendly towards a hog, but I bet there's a way to give one to it. The Volcano Pokemon moniker is also fun since it does learn Smokescreen and Eruption and is of course continued thematically with one of its evolutions. There's just something subtle but cool about Typhlosion, especially when you do get to see it use Eruption to scare off a predator like Aerodactyl within Pokemon Snap. It is capable of making anything go up in flames when angered, and creating explosions by rubbing its fur together, something Bakugo's potential ace Pokemon something. The heat it generates when ready for battle creates a shimmering haze that can also be used to hide itself. This shimmering haze is something you've definitely seen before in your life, and you've likely seen it on really hot or really cold days. This is something that is caused by the change in air density, easily seen over a great distance on incredibly hot days, or if it's hot in your house, but it's freezing outside and you open your door. After all, air is technically not empty at all, but rather a collection of an insurmountable number of particles bouncing around. And I've always found this to be incredibly fascinating. I love the little, heat wave type stuff. When fully enraged, anything Typhlosion touches instantly goes up in flames. In Pokemon Sleep, it is known to toss and turn while sleeping. Because this behavior causes its fur to rub together, it then creates accidental explosions. And it is then recommended to avoid sleeping near or being near a sleeping Typhlosion, which is marginally horrifying. You could never have one inside of your home. No insurance agency would ever allow it, as Typhlosion is a massive safety hazard, which, you know, I guess it's a no-duh since its name partially comes from the word explosion. Now, if Quilava is exposed and influenced by the energy emanating from Mount Coronet, at least within the times of Hisui, then it will change and evolve into its, well, Hisuian form. Hisuian Typhlosion has graceful and refined movements and a gentler, more pacifistic nature compared to its Johtonian version. It can often be seen staring into space. It is assumed that when it does this, it looks at the flow of life energy and searches for wayward spirits and lost souls to eat, though it is believed that it purifies spirits with its flames as it eats them, before it guides them back to the afterlife where they belong. Through this, Hisuian Typhlosion is effectively not actually eating them, but rather maybe eating their negative energy, or at least transforming their energy in general. To follow, it can then weaponize this power, because despite its peaceful nature, it can lose control of its emotions when sufficiently angered, and can unleash ghost flames that incinerate its opponents until nothing remains. It can emit a total of 108 ghost flames from the spots on its neck, and once unleashed, every single ghost flame attacks its opponents while taking on the appearance of ferocious beasts. Makes you think of like that one scene from Dumbo. Now, this is when things start to get really interesting, as the 108 flames relates to the earthly desires within Buddhism. Tie this with the flames that seem like Magatama beads, its ability to purify spirits, and its overall spiritual connection that even ties to Mount Coronet, and it all comes together to form this fire ghost Pokemon who may have had some ties with Spiritomb. Now, I love talking about this connection. I've talked about it so much in other videos, that's why I'm keeping it a little bit shorter here, as it was one of my first theories on this channel before I really knew what I was talking about in terms of theory crafting. But ultimately, Spiritomb itself is also composed of 108 evil spirits sealed away for their deeds. Their inspiration likely coming from the legend of the 108 evil spirits that were also sealed away and would eventually become the 108 stars of destiny within the Chinese novel The Water Margin. In their repentance, these 108 spirits become 3 separate groups of individuals, heavenly, earthly, and demonic effectively, but they all are technically benevolent individuals. Instead, it is their actions that denote their status. For example, the demonic quote-unquote ones are just more violent and are willing to strike down evil with their own hands, while the others are not. They are effectively vengeful spirits to stop the evil from blocking the good from their enlightenment. This is ultimately just an oversimplification of the idea, just for clarification, but it is something we see in other cultures, such as what we see with Asura in their own wrath. Now, the idea here, then, or the theory, is that if Hisuian Typhlosion could not purify Spiritomb, then it would seal away the spirits until they could repent fully for their crimes. And of course, we don't see that in Pokemon yet, but I would love to see a renewed Spiritomb becoming a ghost fairy type that is benevolent in nature as a regional variant, maybe after it has repented for the many hundreds of years. Maybe a certain 10th generation that seems to be leaning towards the idea of revival and renewal could be the one to do so, but more on that idea later. Hisuian Typhlosion's signature move is also called Infernal Parade, summoning the many spirits to attack for it as part of its theme. But as we dig into its visual inspirations, it seems to potentially add in badgers as a potential source of inspiration thanks to its sleekness and shorter snouted face. It may also be based on the Mujina, a shape-shifting yokai occasionally described as resembling a badger, with similar abilities to that of a tanuki, and occasionally identified as being or confused with the mythological tanuki. Mujina are able to summon ghost fire called tanuki-bi, resembling will-o-wisps, which would then tie it further back into that Hisuian form and the little flames that they release, at least visually within the game. More specifically though, said form is also likely inspired by psychopomps, individuals that have the ability to conduct or guide souls from Earth to the afterlife. They are the bridge builder between realms. Finally, this Pokemon overall may have its name derived from Typhon, a monster in Greek mythology who is said to be buried under the volcano Mount Etna after his defeat, and who also had a mate named Echidna, bringing the ties pretty closely together and easier to see. Totodile tends to be both playful and rough by nature and has a bit of biting anything that it sees, including its own trainer. Despite its size, Totodile's jaws are capable of crushing anything, so it sometimes causes serious injuries even though it sees itself as just playfully nipping. Turning one's back on Totodile is considered to be a really bad idea, as it could just bite without warning. It's almost like dealing with a baby that's toothing, except the baby is a crocodile that doesn't know its strength. Kind of reminds me of Jaeger, since we call him a little crocodile all the time. Now, Totodile are scarce in the wild, who would have guessed, though they can be found around bodies of water like rivers, ponds, and lakes. Once again, we find them appearing within Lumios's Wild Zone 20, which may be a reference to the one time a Nile crocodile did find its way into the sewers. Her name was Eleanor. As shown in Pokemon Sleep, Totodile and its evolutions are known to sleep with one eye open and rest only half of its brain at a time, a practice known as unihemispheric sleep. This practice is hypothesized to be a defense mechanism against enemy attacks. And to explain better, unihemispheric sleep is a specialized asymmetric state where one cerebral hemisphere sleeps, slow wave activity, while the other one remains awake, fast wave activity, which is how they were able to measure it, slow and fast wave activity. Primarily observed in marine animals, specifically dolphins and whales for example, and birds. It allows for continued vigilance, swimming, and breathing. Animals often use this to monitor for predators or navigate during long journeys. If you want the nerdier way of explaining it, think of it like elves in D&D who don't need to rest, but rather enter a trance. Except these animals can do so while traveling. What if I shut off the wrong part of my brain and all I could think about is how there's still no plankton Pokemon, despite Pokemon saying there's plankton everywhere within the world? Whatever. This state of sleeping does result in one eye staying open in species, but is also important since whales and dolphins have to actively come up to the surface for air, because otherwise, they'll drown. So effectively, these animals never lose consciousness fully when they sleep like this. They're maxing out their daily hours like nobody else is all I'm hearing, and I have to learn how to do that. Now, Totodile's name in Japanese is actually really funny since it is Wani no Ko, which can be broken down to Wani no Ko, meaning child of a crocodile or alligator, basically just crocodile baby, which, to be 100% honest, there's a lot of Pokemon that are literally just child of, baby of, or just baby water. Following up, we get the caveman-dressed Croconaw. Although Croconaw is described as always having 48 fangs lining its mouth, only 6 are discernible, because, art. The tips of its teeth are slanted backwards, similar to a barbed fish hook, which makes them impossible to remove once embedded in something. Once Croconaw has bitten down onto something, it will not let go until it loses its teeth, but no worries, as any missing teeth will quickly grow back. Its teeth are a direct pull, tooth pull, from crocodiles usually having between 64 to 80 teeth and having the ability to regrow each tooth 50 times over during their lifespan, which results in between 3,200 and 4,000 teeth that they've then had by the end of their life on average. Oops, my baby teeth fell out. Oops, my baby teeth fell out. Oops, oh no, I think that was my 50th tooth. Guess I'll just gum my food to paste from now on. From what I could find, it seems like within a year's time, their entire set of teeth is replaced, which is pretty dope. And I wish we had that if it also meant that our teeth would stay aligned, as mine are not great. They're not aligned, and it would be a nightmare to see everything get misaligned over and over and over again. The whole idea of it looking a bit more prehistoric likely relates to proto-crocodiles and how they effectively were ruling the earth before one of the great extinctions that then resulted in not just proto-dinosaurs, but full-on dinosaurs taking the stage and becoming the rulers of the planet for quite some time. Just a couple, 100 million years. Which leads us to a feral alligator that is Feraligatr. It opens its powerful jaws to intimidate its foes and viciously shakes its head once it clamps down on foes or prey. I need this to be even more violent, though. I need Feraligatr completing full death rolls that crocodiles do. I want them to spin like a Beyblade and tear their foe apart like Bakugo in a Howitzer Impact. They need to rip and tear, is what I'm saying, until there is nothing left. Obviously, I don't actually want that in my Pokemon game, but if we want accuracy, we give them the famed death roll. Now, because Feraligatr has difficulty supporting its weight out of the water, it has been known to move on all fours. However, when hunting or fighting, it is agile and fast due to its powerful hind legs. This would honestly make Feraligatr's model so much more interesting if it stayed on all fours and only raised up to its hind legs for certain attacks, similarly to a certain other crocodile starter. It would also be far more intimidating, in my opinion, to watch it stand up to nearly its full height from its belly and just swing on something. Now, they're noted to live, again, near the water's edge, and as Feraligatr sleeps, it constantly keeps watch on its surroundings. It will immediately charge towards threats should it sense any. And I haven't mentioned it until now, but the crests that this entire line has is just kind of strange. On one hand, people claim it's related to mohawks to represent the boisterous personality, but I think it's something different. In fact, we can look at horned crocodiles that do exist in our world, exaggerate it a little bit and make it similar to how a shark fin assists with maneuverability, and we could get a better understanding of how this big old Pokemon is able to not only be strong, but also be fast underwater and properly guide itself. Now, as it does transform into Mega Feraligatr, it uses its gigantic dorsal fin in tandem with its arm spikes in order to create a massive false jaw, which possesses a bite force that is 10 times stronger than its actual jaws, and is even able to crunch objects larger, of course, than its actual jaws. What this bite force is never really explained, but if we go based on a real alligator being 2,000 to 3,000 pounds per square inch, maximizing it to the 30,000 per square inch, it is nearly as powerful as the weakest T-Rex, who is clocked out to 35,000. This would then explain why it needs the larger skull, because the more force that is exerted, the more force comes back to the body, as it needs to handle the opposite pressure in equal amounts, or else its jaw and arguably its entire skull would shatter. In order to accomplish this feat, it does clasp its hands together to form the mandible and lowers the Totodile mask to act as the maxilla. When doing so, the center of its false eyes glow white, resembling pupils. It's like an intimidation tactic as well. Its dorsal fin does have other purposes as well. It protects its head from incoming physical attacks and helps it dissipate the excess body heat generated by Mega Evolution. An amazing thing to find out, but I believe this is something we've known for a while, especially when we look at Pokemon such as Mega Caesar. The amount of heat that is expelled during transformation because an energy is being used. Now, while the reason why its dorsal fin resembles a Totodile's head is still unknown, it has been theorized that it could be to restore the optimizing biting power it had as a Totodile, which it kind of looks like it's supposed to mean less teeth would then equate to greater amounts of force in one spot, as opposed to tons of force over a spread out area through the use of more teeth, and so that's the only plausible theory I have. Again, less teeth, more bite force per tooth. You can also compare this transformation to toys that transform into other things, like literal transformer toys, and they also reference the behavior of certain crocodile species that carry their young within their jaws. Although, in this case, the imagery is inverted, since the Totodile-shaped dorsal fin encloses Feraligatr's own head. Together with its secondary typing being dragon now, its Totodile mask gimmick may also be a reference to Regidrago and its ability to similarly transform into a dragon head. Though of course, I will once again reiterate, this is definitely meant to represent ancient species of Pokemon, and it gaining the dragon type helps reaffirm that. It also is partly in the Monster Egg group, which is also the egg group that shares the most Pokemon with the Dragon Egg group. The last thing to note is that its category changes from Big Jaw to the Double Jaw Pokemon when it Mega Evolves, which is fairly obvious as to why that name change happens. Treecko is rarely found in the wild and is more common in captivity as with any other starter Pokemon. However, when in the wild, it lives inside overgrown forests. It makes its home in tall trees and will attack anyone that comes near its nest. Because of its territorial nature, it is known to be the protector of the forest's trees. It is also known for its calm and collected personality, as it will never panic under any circumstances, even when faced with a bigger foe. Small dog with big dog energy right there, but with the power to actually back it up. It has small hooks on the bottom of its feet, as you would expect of a lizard, allowing it to walk on walls and ceilings, while its tail allows it to sense humidity and predict the weather for the next day. Simply put, Treecko is a tree gecko, and surprise, I chose it as my starter multiple times when playing through Ruby. I wasn't brainwashed by the very adorable Mudkip like most others. There's some concept art out there where it used to resemble real-world geckos closer, and since art imitates life, but also life imitates art, and it's just a big circle going over and over and over again, Treecko was the inspiration for the naming of Rathalos Treecko, a species of spider. The species name was chosen in reference to both Treecko and the discovered spider being found in the forest. Also, Rathalos Treecko, I wonder what creature that could be named after. Now, in particular, Treecko is inspired by the leaf-tailed gecko in all likeliness, as they are similar in not only general shape, but also have the giant tail that resembles a leaf and the ability to blend in well with their environment. They inhabit humid, intact forests in lowlands and at elevations of 800 meters, about 26-25 feet, don't know why I said it like that, which matches decently well with Hoenn's climate. You might also associate them to anoles, which have the sleeker green body. And I remember actually growing up in Florida and catching them all the time, chasing after them, picking them up, and of course getting bit by them, which really didn't hurt all that much. And just as a side tangent, anytime I talk about it with my mom, she tells me how when she was little, she would have them bite onto her ears and they'd just hang off of her earlobes like little earrings. Luckily, none of them were ever put in enough stress to drop their tail, though they will expand their dewlap, their little like neck area effectively, maybe turning it red in the process to intimidate others, which could be why Treecko has that red underbelly. Grovyle's leafy appearance allows it to be camouflaged in the forests and dense jungles where it lives. It is said to be a master at climbing trees and jungles, as its well-developed muscles make it an expert climber and allow it to leap quickly from branch to branch. The muscles are said to provide explosive bursts of power, which contribute to its incredible leaping abilities. No Pokemon has been able to catch a fleeing Grovyle, no matter how fast they try to be, especially any form of prey that it hunts cannot escape. Probably because it's super used to the environment, it is actually hyper specialized to it, and please cue the Naruto theme on Crappy Recorder as Grovyle flies from branch to branch, and that just about explains everything without me needing to say anything else. But you know me, I'm gonna keep saying everything else. In some way, it may be inspired by the Dromaeosaurus, which has a similarly feathered tail and arms, though of course Grovyle has leaves in their stead. Not only would this allow plumage to show off to the ladies, but it also serves to easily cut through the air as they glide a little bit, and the tail would provide balance. Now, there are a number of other dinosaurs you could compare it to, which ultimately ties into this line once again, belonging to both monster and dragon egg groups. So if you didn't know what was coming up soon, then you should know now. Sceptile is a jungle-dwelling Pokemon. It has no equals in jungle combat. The seeds on its back contain nutrients, which are said to be able to revitalize trees. In the sleep-style decks, it is believed that the unique seed ability of Sceptile helps nearby tree saplings grow and thrive when it is asleep. So what's inside of those seeds? Probably as simple as any nutrients truly necessary for a plant's growth. You could actually bet on a number of different things, but considering Sceptile has a very coniferous tail, you could claim as much as nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, calcium, magnesium, and sulfur, as they're all decomposed from needle litterfall from conifers as just one potential. Sceptile is also capable of leaping freely from branch to branch, while it has the ability to slice down thick trees with a single swipe. It is known to care lovingly for the plants in the forest. It regulates its body temperature by basking in the sunlight. It's said to have no equal or rival when it comes to combat in the jungle. This is really interesting because this implies that it might have some level of photosynthesis, but it's still a cold-blooded creature more than anything. Now, as it reaches this state, it does look a bit more like a Dilophosaur thanks to the crests at the front of its face, which will only become more exaggerated in its Mega form. Mega Sceptile can cut off a portion of its tail to fire it like a missile at any opponent. It can also detonate the seeds on its back and lower tail to launch at its tail tip. Its lost tail will continue regenerating as long as it still has the energy required for Mega Evolution. In other words, launch, 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 missile, 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 and then you lose Mega Evolution. Just keep spamming RPG launchers. And finally, though, it can move to its opponents very quickly in a flash thanks to his fast legs. Flash stepping Sceptile is real. It is a ninja carrying a homegrown rocket launcher as its tail, and by God, it has way more self-control than I do, because I guarantee if that was me, I would teleport immediately in front of the enemy and just point blank fire at them. I'll survive, hopefully. Finally, of course, we see now that those draconic genes have come back to be fully expressed, as it now is a grass dragon type Pokemon, all while kind of looking like a Christmas tree. But if we want to, we could tie it back to the yew tree in visual similarity, which those were historically popular for decoration and predated the popularization of modern Christmas trees. I mean, look at it though. That stinger is like a little Christmas topper. We put a little gnome on top of our Christmas tree because my fiance loves gnomes, because we're both old people deep down inside, and I could say that because she's not going to hear this. And unfortunately, that gnome that gets put on top of the tree gets the whole tree shoved right up its, you know what, not very fun for the gnome, but it looks cute on the tree. The Kickin' Chicken itself, and my #1 pick if I ever play Pokerogue to try and win, Torchic. Within Torchic's belly, this Pokemon has a flame sac filled with a burning fire. This internal flame causes Torchic to feel warm if hugged, the warmth feeling similar to a warm water bottle. That is a #1 contender for those monthly cramps. This is not even a joke. Torchic is just adorable and would be just so many people's best friends during PMS. And as long as Torchic is alive, the internal flame will burn continuously. When attacked, it will shoot fireballs of 1800 degrees Fahrenheit, 1000 degrees Celsius at its foes, leaving them scorched black. Probably worse than that. Now, this is within the range necessary for melting glass for glass blowing as part of the reheat work in process. I know this because I've stood approximately 6 feet away from one in winter, and I was nearly sweating while still standing behind a heat shield with just not even like a lab coat on. Literally, how I'm standing right now, without the lab coat, is how I was in front of that thing behind a heat shield, and I was sweating. I could feel the heat. So if Torchic shoots a fireball near you, you will feel it. I promise you. But that is the least of your worries, just feeling it. Gotta put the lab coat back on now. You guys would yell at me if I didn't wear it. It's part of the brand. It dislikes darkness as it cannot see its surroundings, which I imagine then results in it constantly lighting the areas around it up. Also, I think chickens can't see in the dark. I think I just realized that, rather than in the scripting process. Either way, it will follow its trainer with unsteady steps, and as mentioned in the sleep style decks, its fluffy body is warm enough to sleep next to. Again, living warm water bottle. Also, if you're surprised that even mentioning that doesn't bother me as a guy, it's because I helped raise, 2 younger sisters and was raised primarily by women. Your boy has heard a lot and even taught one of my sisters the code word, Shark Week, to help her feel more comfortable when she has to mention it around other people. None of you are going to be people that she, mentions it around, so I can say that. Also, she doesn't care. She finds it funny. Moving forward, concept art from Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire portrays a different Torchic design, with large floppy ears and a flame-shaped marking on the back of its head. Torchic and its evolved forms are the only Pokemon in a first partner Pokemon evolutionary line to all have gender differences. Additionally, Torchic is the only Pokemon in the first stage of a first partner Pokemon to have gender differences. Basically, first stage forms all just look the same whether you're male or female effectively, with no differences whatsoever. As far as Gens 1 through 9 go, we don't know about Gen 10 yet. Now, the reason the gender difference is very easily missed with Torchic could be a reference to real-life male chicks who have one or few slightly longer feathers that are easily missed, like the black speck on a male Torchic that was only 1 pixel in size, and I never knew about that before this, and I just love that tiniest little detail. Now, Torchic is based on a chicken hatchling, of course. There is some claim that its bright orange coloration is also based on painted chicks, which are chicks whose feathers are dyed with paint and are typically sold during festivals and fairs, according to an interview with a Nintendo Dream Volume 84, meaning that it's not really speculation, it's just the truth. And that just seems wild to me. And of course, I had to kind of look into it, and turns out it's a pretty bad practice, which is no shocker. I mean, you are dyeing baby chicks right after they hatch or injecting the dye while they're in the egg. It runs out, but they're also marketed as toys and even sold in plastic bags while still alive, as if they were a fish in water rather than living things, even though fish are also living things in water and should really get transferred once, it's the right time so that way they don't get shocked. I'm falling off the horse here. you can imagine how all this goes, and luckily it's outright illegal in some places. I got dark real fast. I know I talk about a lot of real life stuff to tie the world of Pokemon to our own and the inspirations, but for some reason that one bothers me more than most of the other stuff. Either way, moving on. Torchic may also be specifically based on the Basan, a legendary fire-breathing chicken in Japanese folklore. I would talk further about the Basan, but it really seems to be inspired purely by it being a fire rooster rather than the deeper inspirations. From a torch chicken to a combusting chicken, we get Combusken. I'm sorry. Again, I just imagine a chicken spontaneously combusting like a paper bag popping. The legs of Combusken possess an equal amount of speed and power. Because of the training it does by running through its grassland habitat, these legs are capable of delivering a barrage of kicks. Its kicks are said to have outstanding destructive power, and it can unleash up to 10 kicks per second. This sounds absurd, but this is impossible in not kicking, but rather in elite boxers who have managed this feat. And of course, the better comparison then is looking at people who have managed to kick at incredible speeds, like Bruce Lee, who of course the English name of Hitmonlee is inspired by, not the rest of the translated names, kicking at a speed of 0.3 seconds. So that places about 3 kicks per second at human peak, with 16 to 18 kicks within 10 seconds. So Combusken is kind of a big deal here. Now, while it is fighting, it is noisy and produces sharp cries that distract and intimidate its opponent. During these fights, its internal flame will burn and become stronger. As mentioned in sleep style decks, Combusken's cry is described as loud and distracting when awake. However, while it sleeps, its cry is much quieter, making this the ideal time to observe it closely. It's a rooster. What did you expect? And I'm starting to realize Alola has a lot of island scans for finding starters, so to not be repetitive, I'm just not saying them anymore. Seems more like a mechanic at this point than actual ecology. The only additional bit of inspiration is its Japanese name, Wakashamo, which can be broken into Wakai for young and Shamo, a breed of Japanese chicken that was once raised for fighting. Also, they're wearing fiery hot pants, which feels like a fashion statement. Fit with signature move Blaze Kick, Blaziken has a courageous personality. It has strong, muscular legs that give it great lower body strength, and its lower body strength helps its kicking and jumping abilities. Its jumps are powerful enough to jump over a 30-story building in a single leap, which amounts to between 300 and 450 feet, or 90 to 137 meters in height. Blaziken's wrists have gray wristband-like markings capable of producing a tuft of fire above them, while also being able to produce flames from its ankles. This allows it to cloak its feet or fists, and uses these abilities while practicing a form of martial art that we can tie into Muay Thai, especially as we look at its stance and the flying knee that it uses. Its flames burn more intensely when it faces stronger opponents, and the blazing punches of Blaziken can leave its foes scorched and blackened, and every several years, its old feathers burn off, with new, supple feathers growing back in their place, which I imagine this simply helps ensure that it isn't bogged down by drag force with ruined and rough feathering. Its sleep style deck states it will occasionally blow out flames and throw powerful kicks while it slumbers. It's believed to be because Blaziken couldn't get enough battling while it was awake. Now, its appearance strongly now ties it to the Shamo chicken, while also having incredibly dense feathering at its legs like the Cochin chicken, though because of it having a humanoid body, we might be able to tie it to the Karura, which is a divine creature with a human torso and a bird-like head in Japanese myth. Though this is even a transliteration, here we go, of Garuda, tying it to Hinduism. These creatures are said to feed on dragons and serpents, which might relate to a certain Gen 10 starter. Now, when it does evolve into Mega Blaziken, it further hones the powers of its kicks, which are always a source of pride to it. As it unleashes a flurry of savage kicks, its legs can begin to burn from the friction of the surrounding atmosphere. And according to the Mega Evolution Pokédex short, as its body temperature increases, its power and speed continue to ramp up. Boiling hot blood flows to its body, enhancing the sharpness of its moves, and its increased speed allows it to subdue opponents instantly. It is nearly impossible for me to properly calculate what the air friction necessary is for Mega Blaziken's body to be burning up like this from sheer friction, when things are incredibly dry and there's strong wind or incredibly fast movement, it changes things massively in terms of calculations. It could even be an incredibly cold day with air movement in general that could cause this to us, and honestly that's the best thing to tie to it. So sure, Mega Blaziken is moving fast, but because it is so much hotter than the air around it and it's moving so fast, we might be able to say that it's no different than us running in the middle of winter without any protection for our bodies. Although, that is why it has feathering all over its body. That way it can protect itself from the wind burns and have less drag overall. It's genuinely a genius design. All those feathers being blown back isn't just for visual coolness or anything like that, it is actual mechanic. And of course, how can I not mention the pre-alpha sketch of an unused Pokemon looking like a mix between Blaziken and Latias that Mega Blaziken seems to also mimic in some capacity, while also gaining those longer ear tufts that pre-alpha Torchic seemed to have. It's a great tie on how things come back in the franchise from scrapped works. Is this the part where I ask if you like Mudkips? Does that meme make you feel old? Does it make you cringe just a little bit? Good. I want you to feel ancient with me. By using the fin on its head, Mudkip can use the fin on its head as a highly sensitive radar. Using this fin to sense movements of water and air, this Pokemon can determine what is taking place around it without even needing to use its eyes. Despite its small size, Mudkip is a very strong Pokemon, as it is capable of moving or crushing boulders larger than itself. And as mentioned in its sleep decks, it has been seen attempting to crush rocks with all of its might, even while asleep. I do have an entire video about the calculated canonical strength of every Pokemon that states anything like this, but one of these days I really need to sit back down and make more accurate calculations, because I had to use some very generalized ones for situations exactly like this with Mudkip. Like, what is the boulder composed of? How large is a boulder that is larger than itself? So on and so forth, right? I've standardized it using granite as a common natural composition of rock, and that may have given a bit of a stronger advantage to some Pokemon than others comparatively, but oh well. Mudkip's large tail fin provides powerful acceleration to propel it through the water. According to its Pokemon Ranger browser entry, Mudkip is a very docile Pokemon, and as seen in Pokemon Concierge, Mudkip wag their tails when they are happy, which is just super adorable. In the wild, it sleeps by burying itself in the mud soil at the water's edge or bottom of a river. It is a Mudkip after all, and it has a strange mixture of inspirations that we could say it is from, with it being the Mudfish Pokemon, which kind of checks out, as it is an amphibious creature in the Water 1A group, matching with other Pokemon that are fairly amphibious. Its Japanese name is Mizugoru, which breaks down into Mizu for water and Mutsugoru for Mudskipper. So, you know, it's Mudskipper that it's based on, while also having traits of the axolotl with those little things on its cheeks. And those orange spots are actually where its gills are as well, meaning that much like a real Mudskipper, it needs to keep its gills moist in order to breathe air, making places like Hoenn actually perfect for it to live in thanks to high humidity. Also, I don't know if it was a full-on trend or if it was just my fiance just really hyper-fixated on the song, which she was hyper-fixated no matter what, but there was a whole axolotl song going on for a while, and now it's just back in my head. Thanks, Mudkip. Marshtomp has a thin, sticky film enveloping its body that enables it to live on land. This development came from living on muddy ground where there is poor footing. Despite this, it is at its best when it's in this environment. Its body weakens if its skin dries out, so it plays in the mud on beaches when the tide is low to replenish fluids, once again tying into making sure those gills stay moist. The difference then is that it's creating a protective layer that traps moisture where it's needed most. As mentioned in the sleep style decks, Marshtomp will burrow into the mud to sleep, seemingly feeling safe as it slumbers. It is capable of moving faster through mud than water with its sturdy legs, and with those legs, it can overwhelm opponents that will struggle on its home turf. Again, highly adapted to its specific environment. I also love that the Alpha Sapphire Dex directly states this Pokemon's hindquarters exhibit obvious development, giving it the ability to walk on just its hind legs. In other words, Marshtomp is built to be thick like humans. It got that derriere. which to be entirely fair is an incredible adaptation that has allowed us and a number of other creatures to not run faster, but to be able to have a strength and endurance that allows us to outlast many other creatures through muscle buildup. Long story short, thicker booty through muscle allows some people to hunt down even cheetahs in this world, which is wild to think about. Also, doesn't necessarily have to be thicker, it's just developed muscle in general there. The single fin on Marshtomp's head is reminiscent of the Myrmidon helmets worn by Myrmidon class Roman gladiators, or the Corinthian helmet with a horsehair crest on top, which was worn by Greek hoplites, with Myrmidon being the Greek word for a type of saltwater fish. Alright, we're going to talk about Swampert, and normally I just do not care about Swampert, but I will say now, before we even get to it, Mega Swampert is easily one of my favorite Megas of all time, even with the phenomenal new ZA and Mega Dimension Megas that were added in. Now, Swampert itself boasts the physical strength to easily drag an enormous boulder weighing more than a ton, batter down opponents, and swim faster than a jet ski, which amounts to over 80 miles per hour for high performance versions, and of course it can even tow a large ship while swimming, making this Pokemon an absolute beast in terms of physical feats. Its arms are as hard as rocks, which can then shatter enormous boulders to pieces with one swing. These thick arms allow Swampert to take down foes with a single swing. It's also been fit with keen eyesight, allowing it to see in murky waters, which this just might be related to how murky water dwellers like catfish, who have nictitating membranes, that word's going to come back later, those words, which are effectively acting like protective shields in place of having eyelids or ever needing to blink. Swampert can also predict storms, sensing subtle differences in the sounds of waves and tidal winds with its fins. When oh god, I just said waves and winds, and oh no, Gen 10, which helps it tell when a storm is approaching. Swampert will pile up boulders to protect its nest, making said nests on beautiful beaches. In order to keep itself moist, it continues to cover itself in mud. The sleep-style Dex states Swampert has occasionally been observed relaxing in the mud before falling asleep, which it typically does this after exhausting all of its strength. You can even see some sleeping as a group in Pokemon Snap, which is actually really adorable, and I'll admit, this is arguably the only time I've really ever liked looking at Swampert. As a personal note, there are always complaints about 3D models, and while some models could definitely be better, there are plenty, if not the majority of Pokemon that do work better in 3D as long as we get their emotions added in. And Snap does it best currently, which made me really love a lot of Pokemon more visually. As it evolves into Mega Swampert, it fills the organs on its back with air before diving underwater or battling, kind of like scuba gear. It uses that pressure though to instead increase the power of its punches. It is literally using compressed air to punch harder underwater. It's like a potato cannon on steroids with every meteoric punch. Now, due to its Mega evolution, it has become much stronger and tougher with its more developed body. Even the water in its body enhances the strength of its already enlarged muscles even further. This boost is described as being similar to how a hydraulic pump works. So not only is it hypercompression and release of air for projectile punching, but it is hydraulic power added onto that. Please, give me the power, rip my arms off, replace them with this power with whatever arms I need for that. I do not care if it'll break my bones with every punch, I want it. Either way, this allows Mega Swampert to use tenacious power on both the land and the water. It can now stand on its two legs more and deliver more damage through its strong, heavy fists. And genuinely, how can I not love it? I personally take incredible pride going from a kid who was incredibly weak and couldn't even laugh without having an asthma attack, and then transforming into a strong, physically fit person. So like, it's no wonder that while I'm not a bodybuilder, I love Pokemon like Mega Swampert and Buzzwole so much. They also remind me of All Might and other superheroes, so, you know, that might play a part subconsciously. The only last bit of inspirations to throw in is that it holds a stance similar to that of sumo wrestlers, and the fins on its head resemble Japanese war fans. We move on to Generation 4, starting with Turtwig, and can you guess what starter I picked? You're right, Turtwig! you know, what can you expect from me? The pattern has been confirmed and established. I have unconsciously always been a hippy-dippy grass starter enjoyer. Now, also, as we go along, it'll seem like the info is shorter and shorter, and it's going to feel a little bit weird probably, but that's just what happens when some Pokemon have existed for 10 generations, while others have less in-world info to work on. Now, for Turtwig, it has a pair of small leaves, described singularly as the leaf on its head by the Pokedex. They grow on a brown patch on its head, and this leaf will wilt if the Pokemon becomes thirsty. Since it is a plant-based Pokemon, it usually nourishes itself through photosynthesis, which occurs across its body and not just with the leaf. It becomes more energetic when exposed to enough sunlight. It also drinks water, which hardens its soil-based shell, yet said soil should feel moist to the touch to determine good health. It is shown to live in an isolated area within a moderate fall climate within Hisuian, right next to a small pond. This entire line's inspiration is incredibly easy to place, with one being turtles in general, a box turtle in particular for Turtwig, but then we have the story of the world turtle. This inspiration is what also helps drive the inspiration for Terapagos. For the world turtle is, in short, a multicultural belief in the old world that the entirety of our world is held upon the shell of a turtle, and in other cultures this extends to the idea that this turtle we sit upon is upon another turtle, and another larger one, more and more turtles becoming larger and larger and larger as we go down. I think John Green, oh god, I hope I don't get that wrong, has a book called Turtles All the Way Down, which is in reference to this. Now, the ideas behind this are symbolic in longevity and strength of the turtle, while the turtle shell itself is semi-hemispheric. Of course, nowadays, some people might laugh, but it's so important to understand that people didn't know the sheer vastness of our planet, its spherical shape, and so much more. And of course, even in the modern age, we still have people who refuse to believe it and would rather be flat earthers. Thousands of years of progress and Jimothy thinks we live on a dinner plate is easily flippable as a sheet of paper kept in security only by ice walls or whatever wild they say these days. Now, as Turtwig evolves, Grovyle can sense where pure water wells are and will carry other Pokemon on its back to these sources. Each Grovyle has a secret place for getting clean spring water, somehow knowing where pure water will well up. It lives in forests, but leaves during the day to allow more sunlight on its trees, and has also been observed living near clean spring water rather than traveling further away. Berries grow on its trees, attracting some species of Pokemon that would, well, want those. The berries it grows are said to be sweet and very delicious, and in the episode The Lonely Snover, it is actually seen to produce acorn-like nuts instead. With this, we begin to see a development that is strange. Whereas we would expect Pokemon like Jumpluff to spread seeds for other plant life and itself, so more of itself can grow, we see a greater range of biodiversity with Grovyle, and then further into Torterra, we will assume. It seems like in the case of Grovyle, it's a natural mutualistic symbiotic relationship between the entire line and the plants that grow on them. They might be born with this plant life, but considering this line lives to serve a much greater ecosystem centered on itself, almost like the world turtle, it makes sense that it would also be a Pokemon that helps spread healthy plant life wherever it may go. Meaning that it isn't just seeking out healthy spring water for itself, it seeks it for its plants, and further then for the Pokemon that like to corral around it or on it, especially as it finds its final resting place as a Torterra. But quickly before that, of course, our turtle is a bit more snapping turtle-like and has a body shape similar to some ankylosaurs. It just doesn't have nearly as many scary looking spikes on its body. Torterra's large and clean shell supports the lives of many small Pokemon, which occasionally gather and build their nests upon the shell. Some are even born and spend their entire lives there. They migrate in groups, searching for clean water, creating the illusion of moving forests. However, it is typically immobile. They are believed to possess unmatched physical strength, and ancient people believed the ground contained a gigantic Torterra living underneath. Thus, it brings us full circle to the idea of the world turtle. But not only do we get to see it as an example with smaller Pokemon living on it, giving us the idea, but we also get Torterra Garden within Pokemon Detective Pikachu, which grants us a sight unlike any other regarding this Pokemon, and honestly regarding any other. Massive, effectively incomprehensibly sized Torterra, Pokemon that have grown so large that it really does give us the impression that maybe, just maybe, the world of Pokemon, had we not already seen it from space, could have sat upon a Torterra's back. And that's just something that is really fun and beautiful. And at the very least, it is called the continent Pokemon. So do with that information what you will. Maybe somewhere out there in one of the many different alternative dimensions, this is true. Much like the world that Xurkitree comes from, being a world completely composed of its own species of Ultra Beasts that we are made aware of, at least. This is also a great time to say a video on how Necrozma created the Ultra Beasts and a deeper analysis of their worlds and how they were created is coming very soon, arguably up next after this video. Get ready for a journey to the west with Sun Wukong in almost direct fashion, as we have the Chimchar line. This comparison becomes a lot clearer once we reach its final form, but there are other potential inspirations for it. Chimchar's rear has a small round red patch that is usually obscured by flames produced by burning gas in its stomach. These flames cannot be put out by rain, although they go out when Chimchar goes to sleep, and burns weakly when it feels ill. In the past within Hisui, this flame on its rear has caused people to mistake it for an apparition, dubbed the Lantern Tail. It is very agile, being able to climb the rocky ledges of tall mountains where it then lives. And in fact, it's even depicted to live in snowy mountains, meaning that its warmer body is likely more comfortable in the colder environments where it can outcompete other Pokemon and get easier meals while staying warm. And when we look at it, of course, we have a chimp. But it does have a singular shot, at least within the anime, that I had never really noticed before anywhere else in the games or anywhere else, again, where it looks like it has a baboon-like marking on its tail. To me, it looks a bit like a heart, and while there are macaques with butts like this, and plenty of examples of chimps with very swollen red butts for mating purposes that I will absolutely not be showing on screen, nor do I personally recommend looking up, I think that this was just, depending on the consistency of it, the animators having fun with it, but then it eventually turns into something more when it does evolve more and more. The flame on Monferno's tail has several purposes. Primarily, it can be controlled to keep opponents at an ideal distance or stretched in order to make Monferno appear larger. This works incredibly well because the color of the flame will blend in well with Monferno's body, and the only markings you would see are the face, neck fluff, and maybe the fingers and the feet, which can absolutely make it look a lot scarier, almost like a fiery gorilla is staring you down. Now, the size of its flame, in combination with the brightness of its facial markings, indicates this Pokemon's position in its pack. The bigger the flame and the brighter the pattern, the higher the Pokemon's position. In addition to using its flaming tail as a weapon, it can also leap from ceilings or walls to perform aerial attacks. Now, it's easily tied to the golden snub-nosed monkey thanks to its color and similar face, alongside a mandrill for the color patterns on its face. And what's interesting about mandrills is that the more excited, agitated, or higher their testosterone is, the more vibrant the red and blue colors on their face becomes, tying it right back to why they would be an inspiration for Monferno. Lastly, we start to get a new pun, as it is a martial artist, giving us the specific pun of monkey kung fu, which is effectively exactly as it sounds, but there are many styles of it, and even helps develop other forms of martial arts thanks to its difficult acrobatic movements. Infernape uses a special kind of martial arts involving all its limbs, monkey kung fu. Its fire never goes out, its crown of fire is also indicative of its fiery nature, and it is beaten by none in terms of quickness as it tosses enemies around with agility, a willingness to take on any opponent while exemplifying its dazzling appearance, shrouding itself in flames and battling as if it were engaged in dance. On one hand, yes, we absolutely have Sun Wukong, the main character who is a monkey that traveled far, trained, defeated Oni upon return, met with the ancient dragon of the sea, and so much more. This in turn would inspire many things, including Son Goku from Dragon Ball, and Shin, I think is his name from God of High School, don't quite remember. But then we can get into the story of Hanuman from Hindu epic Ramayana. I've talked about this a lot in an older video regarding hidden legends of the Pokemon world, but Hanuman was granted immunity to fire and was half human, half monkey, and the spiritual son of Vayu, the wind god, and he ultimately would become a full deity in his own right through his feats. And in fact, it is believed that Hanuman influenced the creation of Sun Wukong, much like how the Komainu would have also traced all the way back towards India in specific, making Arcanine and Infernape together more Pokemon that could have their roots in a different region inspired by Hindu belief or India in general, or maybe even a third one being Indonesia in specific. I just keep throwing in these Gen 10 things here and there because it's fun. Piplup has a strong sense of self-pride. Because of its pride, it has a hard time accepting food from humans and bonding with its caretakers. It will even puff out its chest after it falls down, which it often does due to its poor walking abilities. However, it is a skilled swimmer that can dive for over 10 minutes in order to hunt. It has also been shown to fly short distances in the animated series, and it has been shown to also live alongside the seashore in colder climates or in isolated areas near ponds in said climates, both of which we see again in Hisui. Just as any other penguin, it has thick downy feathers that do protect it from the cold, and ultimately this entire line is just an emperor penguin from chick to fully grown adult. The name itself in Japanese is even more adorable though, as we get Pochama, which may be broken down into Pocha Pocha, the sound of pebble splashing in water, and even Bochama for young master. Makes perfect sense when you consider the leadership position that it will gain as it evolves more and more. Prinplup has a high sense of self-pride, which prevents it from forming groups of its own kind. In fact, each and every Prinplup sees itself as the most important. Very narcissistic behavior on this one. Now, it of course can be found in icy waters where it hunts for prey. They swim gracefully in cold seas, and its singing voice has been compared to a roaring tide. Its wings are powerful enough to snap even the thickest trees, which then allows us to understand how their bodies become more durable, because it would be no surprise to find out that they might be breaking through small ice floes from time to time, which, hint, it definitely does when it evolves. It does look more like it's wearing a tailcoat and buttons, similar to what you might see depicted in classical attire, and the head looks more like that of a crested penguin in design, more specifically the erect crested penguin. Then of course we have Emperor Empoleon. The edges of its wings are comparable to master-crafted blades, capable of slicing through thick ice floes, and this Pokemon will use them to attack anyone or anything that damages its pride. However, it prefers to avoid unnecessary disputes at times. When swimming in the water, it can move as fast as a jet boat, and within Hisui, people have revered Empoleon since those times, referring to it as the master of the waves, actually since before Hisui. The idea of a jet boat coming towards me is already scary if I'm in the water, but one that can also slice through ice floes with ease means that I'm getting sliced like a watermelon, making it even more horrifying. So, I mean, I really shouldn't be in ice-ridden water, because that sounds like a big danger to me specifically, but, you know, it's even more dangerous when you have something like that swimming around. Empoleon being a leader also seems to have properly taken on the role then, rather than assuming the role, and they have a hierarchy now, as the 3 horns on its head are a testament to its power, the leader being known to have the biggest horns. Of course, we can make some comparisons to Napoleon Bonaparte thanks to its appearance and its name, but the wings that it has reminds me of the same weapon used by Dalton in One Piece, which his weapon is incredibly similar to Napoleon's wing, which is ultimately just a spade, I guess. Like, I couldn't find anything that ties it to real-life history or applications, but clearly this might be something used as a common trope, so I guess let me know if you find any ties to this. We're halfway there with Generation 5, the Big Apple of Unova, which was the first game since Crystal that I saw absolutely no spoilers of before playing it myself. But if you want more of my history with Pokemon, there's a whole members only video on that with a new one coming soon where I rank every evil team and why some of them deserve way more hype than they actually get. Nevertheless, we're on Snivy, which again, grass type enjoyer here. I think snakes are adorable, little danger noodles, give me the emerald vine snake. It has a large palmate leaf with 3 prongs on the end of its tail. This tail can perform photosynthesis, allowing Snivy to move more quickly and adding an edge to its moves. However, the tail will begin to droop when it loses energy. It can use its vines with incredible adaptive and dexterity skills to make up for having short arms. It has a calm, collected demeanor and is very intelligent, but prefers to be alone and avoids groups wherever it can. They tend to show it having a more stuck-up or haughty demeanor overall, which honestly makes it fit with Charon within Pokemon Black and White specifically, not Black 2, White 2. Now, Snivy's designer, Reiko Tanoue, mentioned that its design was inspired by a picture book describing snakes that resemble vines. And while I made the comparison to the emerald snake, there are plenty of other green snakes like the literal vine snake or tree snake that would fit here as its inspiration. Though in order to make it less threatening and more appealing, they gave it little arms which continue to stick around despite it losing its legs in its final evolution. They're just folded behind its body as superior. Its head is also very much like a bird of paradise flower, which would match the regal theme that is seen in Snivy's line overall. Said flower is also called Strelitzia, messing that one up, named after Queen Charlotte of Mecklenburg-Strelitz. Kent Sugimori has said that Snivy, Servine, and Serperior are based on Western culture, specifically mentioning the manga series The Rose of Versailles as an inspiration. Snivy, Tepig, and Oshawott evolutionary lines represents the diverse cultural influences of the Unova region, with their evolutionary lines inspired by Western, Chinese, and Japanese cultures, respectively. When we look at its tail, we can figure out it's inspired also by the Japanese creeper, as its Japanese name also literally translates to Sutarja, which is from Suta and Ja, which translates to Japanese creeper snake effectively. These are also known as Boston Ivy and Grape Ivy, once again giving us Boston within New York State, and grapes relating back to wine and their extravagance. Tons of subtle layers going on here. Evolving into Servine, it has even more leaves that are capable of performing photosynthesis, but only while they are clean. As such, it will go to great lengths to stay dirt-free. It's known to be a swift Pokemon that hides in thick foliage or shadows to avoid attacks before retaliating. It will mercilessly pummel its opponent or target by whipping them with its vines. Unfortunately though, it does have an inflated sense of pride, which is one of its major weaknesses, especially as due to this pride, it will be unable to cooperate with other Pokemon for a very long time. This isn't to say that it doesn't care about other Pokemon either. In fact, N had a Servine that he granted to White within the manga that had then grown and decided to stay with her, protecting her and her Pokemon in her time of need, and serving as another part of her team as she learned to become a Pokemon trainer. Ken Sugimori stated that the evolutionary line was meant to gradually become more snake-like as it evolves, and by my analysis, this in turn would cause it to become more and more intimidating and be incredibly fitting for the qualities that we do find in Serperior, the superior serpents. Literally called the regal Pokemon, Serperior will only attack with full force against opponents that are unfazed by its piercing glare, which is said to be able to halt its opponent's movements. This intimidating stare and its regal form have earned it the title Lord of the Forest. It is capable of amplifying solar energy with its body. Once again, we look at Pokemon Snap and find within a foggy woods, once again known as Elsewhere Forest within Bella Silva, that we find a slew of incredibly protective Pokemon, and it is within the Autumn section specifically that you might lay eyes upon a Superior emerging from its hidden nest, watching over the many Pokemon from a vantage point. Its ability to amplify sunlight within its body, as noted in its Pokédex entry, may allude to King Louis XIV of France, who famously referred to himself as the Sun King. Its white face may be referencing the skin whitening fashion popular among European aristocracy in the 17th century. It's also like super sleek, and I believe they who would have guessed, hyper romanticize the idea of having like sharp corners and having sleek faces in that time period, if I remember properly. Its body markings resemble the acanthus leaf motifs that were popularized during the Renaissance. The dark green design on its chest appears to form a fleur-de-lis, a French insignia commonly found on coats of arms belonging to European noble families and nations. This is also, of course, one of the deeper ties that people bring the French connections of Kalos and AZ to Serperior, though I won't be talking about that here. Now, alongside its regal appearance, Serperior's ability to immobilize opponents with its piercing gaze may be a reference to the Basilisk, the legendary king of serpents in European folklore. Basilisk gets really weird because despite the name, it gets translated vastly differently, and instead we end up with cockatrices being called the Basilisk, and then it completely messes with our understanding of what some historical myths were if we just look at the artwork. Additionally, the basil-like leaves on its body may serve as a visual pun, as both basilisk if you really want to say it that way, and basil share the Greek root basilius, meaning king, reinforcing Serperior's royal theme. Onto Tepig, who is a nimble Pokemon despite its appearances and uses its speed to both dodge and confound enemies before striking back. It is capable of blowing fire from its snout, however, instead of flames, it will spout thick black smoke when ill. Its nose has an excellent sense of smell, allowing it to locate any food it wants. It is known to be a ravenous glutton, loving to roast berries before eating them, but occasionally it gets overexcited and burns them. The whole idea of it having a really strong nose just goes back to pigs being used for truffle hunting. Pigs in general also have a narrow thermal neutral zone, making them highly susceptible to heat stress, especially due to their high body mass and thick, fat, insulated skin. Though instead of fire from their noses, they might actually breathe from their mouths in order to help regulate themselves. The specific breed of pig that Tepig is based on is likely the British Saddleback, having similar patterns to Tepig's color pattern. And considering it will eventually become a war commander, it is likely based on war pigs and incendiary pigs in specific, which, yes, we're going to get a bit dark again, so prepare yourself, as Roman writing would tell stories of pigs lit ablaze and sent through enemy armies. This worked as, one, a psychological bit of warfare, because have you heard a pig scream? It's physically painful to me in particular and many others. Two, the loud noise is also incredibly disruptive to us, but also to elephants, who reacted unpredictably to high-pitched noises. And then three, elephants feared fire. So when you throw all of this into one barrel of war and use it, it was an incredibly dark method that worked incredibly well. On the positive side, we now see it living in Area Zone 20 within ZA Lumiose, the same as many other starters that appear there, which I'm just going to stop mentioning. All of these just being rare Pokemon strongly drawn out by the sheer amount of energy still residing in the area. Evolving into Pignite, it is willing to defend its friends from opponents no matter how strong they are. It has a fire in its stomach which it fuels with food. This fire can affect its body temperature, and the intensity of this flame increases as fuel is added or when Pignite is angered. As the flame grows stronger, its speed increases, though on occasion, its body temperature will go so high that it becomes engulfed by a scorching fireball, once again giving us a very clear tie to those war pigs. However, it has no strength remaining whenever it has an empty stomach. It's just a living furnace effectively, and if it's in danger, it will blow out large smoke clouds to escape. It wears a wrestling singlet now with markings that resemble a ding or ancient Greek pottery, putting a final tie to war pigs. Despite this, when it evolves into Emboar, we get a very strong mixing and return of a Journey to the West concept and character. Using the Wreath of Flames on its neck and shoulders, it will set its hands on fire as it is now Emboar. It uses its power and speed to master fighting moves, and this power can be increased when Emboar's neck flame intensifies. The more dire the situation, the more excited Emboar becomes, to the point of enjoying itself. It's actually expressed within the manga that when it reaches this stage of evolution, fire is secondary, as the fighting prowess and martial arts skills should be focused on to really bring out the potential of this Pokemon. Though very tough and relentless when fighting, it shows deep affection for those it considers friends. It can also unleash powerful blasts of fire using only its nose, and cloaks its body in a fire to use many powerful attacks. Now, Emboar gets these big ol' touch that immediately make me think of the demon pigs, which are known as Zubaije. But despite its title, the demon is not really or nearly as threatening as you might think. This character was formerly a Heavenly Navy commander. He was banished to Earth for misconduct, reborn as a man-eating pig monster, and later redeemed by protecting the monk Tong Sanzang on his westward pilgrimage. Originally, he was known as Celestial Marshal Tianpeng, and the misconduct was trying to seduce Moon Goddess Chang'e. Yeah, buddy, we don't seduce moon goddesses. Really bad idea. They're supposed to be beautiful. They're supposed to represent a lot of different things, good and bad. Some say love, some say just cruelness and otherworldliness, you name it. And even if you do succeed, there's not a very good track record of what happens to them in their lives. Sorry, Avatar fans. Zubaije is described as a grotesque, fat, anthropomorphic pig with a long snout, big ears, and short black hair. While I don't think Emboar is grotesque, and that sounds really harsh, it does fit Emboar's general physique and some design choices. But you bet all that fat has muscle behind it. Because remember, it takes mass to move mass. Then we get into Mega Emboar. In battle, it wields a serpentine halberd spear shaped from blazing flames it emitted from its palms. Now, this halberd spear is absolutely historic. Not only was it commonly used as a versatile weapon on the battlefield, but it was common particularly in Chinese martial arts and often made with Damascus steel. Zhang Fei is the particular inspiration for Emboar here, who is said to own a Zhang Long serpent spear. The legendary 1.8 Zhang Long, approximately 4 meters, is the signature weapon of Fei. It's questioned whether it was actually real or just literary work, but one thing we know for sure is that spears of similar make were used, as we've just discussed. Mega Emboar is strongly driven by its emotions, which are said to be running high due to the effects of Mega Evolution. As such, it tends to act alone and relentlessly challenge foes it sees, but still retains a strong sense of duty to the point of risking its own life in order to rescue an imperiled friend. This makes Emboar our protagonist, a true leader, not just a commander or a boss. Mega Emboar is the front line of an army that shows up before the war starts. I mean, look at the 2D official art that they've created. It's got like the smallest little smirk. It stands with a spear planted at its side. I feel like I'm about to get stabbed by a Wakandan warrior when I look at Mega Emboar. It just boasts confidence. It's perfect. The more riled up Mega Emboar is, the hotter the fire on its beard and spear burns, with the latter being able to reach temperatures of 18,000 degrees Fahrenheit, 10,000 degrees Celsius. When Mega Emboar unleashes a punch with its enhanced muscles, this single fist blow is strong enough to destroy half of a reinforced concrete building. Okay, slow down here, because that temperature outclasses the heat of so many Pokemon, if I remember properly, and in fact it actually ties with Magcargo's internal body temperature exactly, and Ultra Necrozma's, which actually goes beyond that, but that's neither here nor there. And apparently this is also close to the temperature of low temperature plasma within lightning. The thing, at least with Magcargo, is that it typically sticks to volcanoes, and it is an internal body temperature, meaning that hopefully there's not a lot of external radiance. When we look at Mega Emboar here, I'd say it's a much larger threat because it is also letting off bursts of heat that are equivalent to the surface of the sun, and I think even at small amounts that would evaporate our lungs. In fact, I don't think that I know that. Your lungs breathing that immediate temperature in would leave them shriveled up like raisins. I really need to do a whole video on the hottest Pokemon of all time, temperature-wise. That would be a ridiculous and fun video. We have one more on Unova with Oshawott, making superior the odd one out of the trio, as it has neither gotten an alternate form nor a mega form. It carries a pale yellow seashell called a Scalchop on its belly. This shell is made of the same material as its claws and is used for both battles and cracking hard berries. It wields the shell like a knife, just like Mr. 13 in One Piece, and it uses the Scalchop to block the moves of its enemies before slashing back at them in swift retaliation, which, to be entirely fair, scallops and a lot of other similar things can be pretty sharp and even introduce a bacterial infection easier to the body because of where they're found and then they are stepped on. Oshawott learned how to maintain its Scalchop with riverbed stones by mimicking the humans it observes using wet stones. If the Scalchop is heavily damaged or lost, it can grow a new one from its navel. Simply put, this line is strongly inspired by sea otters and samurai, eventually becoming a military commander much like Emboar, with sea otters using clamshells, rocks, and other objects as tools to help them in their day-to-day life. It takes it even further though by holding the Scalchop in a fashion similar to Japanese war fans. As another side, otters are one of my fiance's favorite animals, and at some point in the future I need to do everything I can to get her to hold hands with a friendly little river otter. Not a wild one though, ones that are in like a proper good sanctuary that are being taken care of ethically, so on and so forth, because wild otters are absolutely incredibly vicious, or can be. They're also incredibly intelligent and are 10 to 30 pounds of might that will mess you up. But hey, there is keystone species, meaning they're critical to how an ecosystem functions, and if we removed them, things would get absolutely buck wild incredibly fast. Everything would just start falling apart. Once again, another video idea, keystone species video, gotta do that at some point. For its Japanese name, Mijumaru, according to Ken Sugimori, suffixes such as maru or suke were considered for Oshawott's Japanese name to make it sound more typically Japanese. Its name effectively breaks down to calling it an immature round water creature. Not in the negative terms or sense. For clarification, it is literally a child, so yeah, immature makes sense. Now wielding two Scalchops, we have Duwat, who is known to have a studious and stern nature. It regularly trains to use combat techniques with them, and these techniques differ between individual duats. There are 3 main types of war fan use, which are Tessen, Gunsen, and Gunbai, translating to iron ribs, which is so cool, folding fan for cooling, and solid command fan, though it of course goes much further with techniques of offense and defense consistently being adapted between each and every samurai, thus explaining why it differs for every single duat. Now, duat refines its skills through dedicated and repeated training and carefully maintains the quality of each Scout Chop. Its flowing, double Scout Chop technique can defeat even those who master the art of swordsmanship. I mean, if you're strong enough, you block with one, you attack with the other. That sword is a singular weapon. Humans have modeled their sword play by observing Duat's deft movements while wielding its 2 Scout Chops. This studious attitude that we just talked about was expressed in an Oshawott that then became Special Agent Blake's partner Pokemon within the manga in Black 2, White 2. This strong sense of focus and being incredibly studious and just training regularly is what separated it from other Pokemon and got his attention. Now, Helen DeWitt is also the author of The Last Samurai, which may play into Duat's evolution, but I would argue that it plays even better into its Hisuian form when we get to talk about that. Segmented armor resembling bracers covers each of Samurai's limbs. The 4 limbs bracers contain shell swords called scimitars. In battle, Samurott can stand on its hind limbs and use its scimitars to fight. In the time it takes a foe to blink, Samurott can draw, attack with, and sheathe the scimitars attached to its front legs. It is said that Samurott can fell an opponent in one swing, and that it can silence foes with a glare or a howl. I'm not gonna lie, when any creature goes from 4 legs to 2 legs, it immediately becomes more terrifying. I'd be even more scared if it aura farmed on me and decided to stand on 1 leg while striking me down like the bug that I would be to it. Clowns on unicycles just became that much more terrifying, I just realized. Samurott is a master of a sword drawing art called Iaijutsu. Samurott leads its group with strict leadership and will mercilessly thrash those who do not follow its rules within the group. This is very much shogunate behavior, going well beyond just being a strong commander. While it was decided that Oshawott would be based on a sea otter, the designers had issues in creating a fully evolved form, which was more interesting than just a bigger otter standing on 2 legs. At that point, Yusuke Amura went to see an otter exhibit at the Sunshine Aquarium in Ikebukuro, but his attention was rather caught by the strength displayed by some sea lions at a nearby sea lion show, and thus Omura decided to incorporate elements of the latter animal into the design. The helmet over its head appears to be based on the rare spined murex shell. The markings on its chest make it reminiscent of a giant otter. Its whiskers bear a great deal of similarity to the facial hair found in some menpo, a type of facial armor employed by samurai. But what gets wild is that it doubles, in that its Japanese name is Daikenki, which can be broken down to Dai, which is symbolized in a way that matches the overall facial pattern of Samurott in its calligraphy. But when we separate it into Dai, Ken, and Ki, we get Great Sword Demon, which is absolutely wild and only gets better when the harsh environment of Hisui influences Duat to evolve into its Hisuian form, which gains the Dark typing. Hisuian Samurott is said to have a cold-hearted nature and is deft with its shell blades. Unlike its Unovan counterpart, which prefers to fight fair, Hisuian Samurott will do anything to win a battle and prefers to use tricks, surprise attacks, and cheap shots. It remains still and silent until it sees its opponent. Then, in the blink of an eye, Hisuian Samurott draws its scimitars and thrusts them at its enemies. The attacks it uses are likened to the ceaseless crashing of waves and can confuse and overwhelm opponents. The wounds inflicted by it are said to take many years to heal. This all goes back and is honestly modernly exemplified through Demon Slayer. We get the flow and movement of a sword moving with the tides of battle, but then now we have this twist to it. And that last part, when it comes to the hard to heal wounds, comes from the more difficult serrated blades that then tear the body apart, making it harder to heal and the harder it is for your body to handle it. This whole new transformation gives us a massively different aesthetic and idea that makes it incredibly reminiscent of Ronin. Now, effectively, Ronin are the samurai without masters, whether it be out of dishonor, a failed past, not wanting to be subservient to a daimyo, you name it. And these people were considered the most dangerous of the bunch because they fight for no cause related to greater kingdoms. They fought for their own independent values, meaning that they could work for anyone, even just themselves, which was kind of a really big no-no. It was a lot of, you work for the greater good, quote-unquote good, if you would. You work for the greater body of people. The individual does not exist, and that technically is still a lot of issues within Japan at this point. And so, when you have somebody that is very independent, separates from the group, and is working for themselves or their own values, things get scary, quote-unquote, for those larger companies or groups. They wandered, worked for their living, and since they did not fight for the honor of themselves or another by traditional standards, the Ronin's fighting was not traditional either, thus explaining the dark typing being added in and the personality traits of Hisuian Samurott. Even the rugged, unkempt, and longer hair is a way to exemplify this lifestyle. And look, I chose Cyndaquil as my Hisui starter, but Hisuian Samurott is incredibly cool and deserves a lot of love too. Now, I wanted to find some symbolism regarding the black and red armor coloration in samurai armor, though I'm not sure I can actually rely on any of the sources I found, as they're also not the most consistent. So if you know anything, let me know, because there has to be some significance here other than making it look cooler or edgier overall. Time for a spiny nut, also known as Chespin. I'm not joking, it's literally called the spiny nut Pokemon, but when I was first typing up this script, I thought it said spicy nut, and I was severely confused for a solid 5 minutes trying to wrap my head around writing Chespin's intro for this. But Chespin's shell can protect it from powerful attacks. The quills on its head are usually soft, but can be stiffened for attacking as well, allowing the quills to pierce rocks. Despite having a curious nature that tends to get it in trouble, Chespin keeps an optimistic outlook and does not worry about small details. What a great way to go about life. By consuming tons of berries, the bark shell that covers Chespin's head and body will grow sturdier. It does tense up right before impact, which means that it does brace itself for the impact just in case it's a tough hit to take or it actually is hardening those quills. It also tried to fight a car multiple times within Legends EA, if that tells you just how sturdy it already is without evolving, and how even though it lost 3 times in battle in a row, it wanted to keep on fighting, which is super endearing and impressive and makes me love it that much more. Oh, yeah, Chespin was the one I chose when I played X for the first time as a blind Nuzlocke, streamed here on YouTube and Twitch. Now, her name was Shelly, which is hilarious because nearly every Nuzlocke I do, I end up with a female starter, which I never said the names of my starters, but Bulbasaur, Horseradish, of course. I don't remember Treecko at all. It was probably a weeb anime name. Gaia, weeb anime name again that I can't remember, and now Shelly. Now, Chespin is a chestnut hedgehog through and through, especially since its Japanese name can be broken down from Harimoron, really long name, to represent Harinezumi for hedgehog. It can be found in Wild Zone 17, near Daggersby, and far away from the many Pyroar in the area. It's like an audience member for the Court of Royals up the stairs, effectively. Quilladin is not aggressive and never starts fights, although it is known to exercise its lower body by running into other Quilladin. When it is forced to defend itself, it relies on its shell to deflect attacks before counterattacking with its sharp quills. Its shell is both sturdy and heavy, which naturally strengthens the lower body of Quilladin. A Quilladin's tackle is known to be powerful enough to send a trailer flying. And due to this body, it is immune to pain. Not even the most violent of collisions will phase it. It's a perfect little ball that serves as the perfect defense, and I personally really love it. Its bulky, rotund appearance is possibly a reference to the Calibium and Cupule that protect the nuts of chestnut trees. The info is pretty straightforward all in all. Chestnut, Dreadnought, Chestnut. And let me tell you, it fits the idea of a Dreadnought amazingly. A moniker often given to a creature or person with impenetrable defenses sent in to slowly roll through the enemy line and destroy everything as one might describe. And based on Chestnut's info, it may have done exactly that in the past. They are known and rather renowned for their tank-like bodies. It is capable of flipping a 50-ton truck. And once it gets into its defensive stance with its hands covering its face, it can resist a bomb's explosion. It will not hesitate to use its sturdy body to shield its allies from danger with a literal shield that it creates with its arms. While Chestnut is normally gentle and prefers avoiding conflict, it will not hesitate to give opponents a thrashing with its thorn fists when driven to do so. That is the beauty of someone who has real strength, real power. Not using it against others, but when you have to, and when other people are in danger and are in need, you use it. Now, it does look a bit more like a three-banded armadillo, hair and all, which does get expressed more in its mega form that gains more hair like a chestnut might. In addition, this trio of Pokemon in Kalos are very much RPG or D&D classes, being the warrior or barbarian here, while our next two are effectively the magician, sorcerers for Fennekin line, and the rogue for Froakie's line. As it evolves into Mega Chestnut, it is effectively visually identical to Don Krieg, who even uses an incredibly similar weapon fashioned from shoulder pauldrons, just like Mega Chestnut now does. Its outer shell and body experience a significant increase in defensive capabilities due to Mega Evolution. The fur on its body has grown to the extent that it functions as an impact-absorbing cloak that gives that incredible regal look to it. With newfound confidence in its ability to withstand any attack, which I'm amazed it needed more encouragement to do so, Mega Chestnut exhibits a steadfast spirit and a level-headed personality. Its shield-like shoulder armor can transform into destructive weapons as described. When it removes a piece of its incredibly tough shoulder armor, spikes extend from the shield to form an axe-like weapon with a long handle. The axe head is so heavy that even Mega Chestnut's brute strength can't easily wield it with one hand. However, gripping it with both hands allows Mega Chestnut to use this weapon with precision to overpower its foes. Neither its weight nor height increases whatsoever upon Mega Evolution, which means that whatever materialized on its body as part of Mega Evolution was already there and not being utilized at all, stored within maybe some sort of seed that was underneath its armor, at least theoretically speaking. Now let me follow this king, please. Even his face looks kind of like a shield, and it kind of looks like the vague shape of the diplomatic symbol of France as an unofficial emblem of the French Republic, but that might be a little bit of a stretch, and it might just be the crown with the full bushy beard, effectively. Took a break, then I spilt water on myself, because apparently I can't drink like an adult, so here we are. Moving on to Fennekin, though. Hot air is vented from Fennekin's ears, reaching temperatures of over 390 degrees Fahrenheit, 200 Celsius, and using this ability, it is able to intimidate its opponents. Fennekin chews on twigs, which fill it with energy, and in ZA, it is shown that Fennekin love chewing on revitalized twigs, which can rejuvenate even a sickly Fennekin beyond the capabilities of a Pokemon Center. To be fair, I've talked about this ad nauseum regarding foxes in my ecology of entire regions, but they do eat twigs, not necessarily as part of their diet, but rather as part of getting prey like insects primarily. Fennekin is noted that it can be temperamental, but it tries to do its best for its trainer, and simply put, it is inspired by the Fennec Fox, the best of all foxes in my opinion, which I did get to see in person within an ethical zoo in Florida, and then we also get inspirations of the Kitsune. These magical, mystical yokai having an incredible history that spreads from those protective of shrines and being benevolent, all the way to kitsune like Tamama no Mai, who worked her way up as a human to become betrothed to an emperor and cause the fall of an entire kingdom, becoming one of the most notorious yokai or kitsune of all time. In all scenarios, kitsune are incredibly gifted with magical powers, as we will see with Fennekin's evolutions. Fennekin can also be found hiding away on rooftops of Wild Zone 18, stalking the flying Pokemon and waiting for its opportunity to strike. Braixen always keeps its stick in its tail, which it sets alight using friction from its bushy tail fur that resembles a witch's broom. The stick also helps calm down Braixen, and the flame from the lit twig is used for both attack and communication, drawing circles in the air with the flame to indicate danger. It's like casting a spell. Now, its fur is reminiscent of seifuku, the predominant uniform worn by schoolgirls in Japan, and aristocratic attire from Western Europe during the Renaissance. It's also effectively wearing stockings or hose. I'm pretty sure those are technically two vastly separate things, but my male brain just kind of phased out of existence while trying to figure out the differences, and I realized nobody would probably care if I specifically explained it. I'm not a man of fashion. I know what to put on to look good outside of these videos, and that's pretty much it. In its final stage, Delphox carries a stick that it uses like a magic wand, who would have guessed. When in use, the tip is set alight, and then when not in use, the stick is hidden away in its sleeve-like fur. Oh look, I too have a stick up my sleeve! I cast Become a Member of the Channel! Either that or I turn you into a Snom. Forced to only consume snow for the rest of your life without evolving. Take your pick. Now, Delphox, I mean, a solid 5 minutes to get this joke right and to not throw this across the room. Cue me throwing it across the room. And when not in use, the stick is hidden away in its sleeve-like fur. Oh, look, fuck, I just threw it. Delphox gazes into the flame at the tip of its wand to achieve a focused state of mind that allows it to see into the future. It can use its psychic power to ensnare its enemies in a fiery vortex capable of reaching 5,400 degrees Fahrenheit, 3,000 degrees Celsius. It even uses the stick to leave burn marks in the ground. In ancient times, people used the shapes of Delphox's burn marks for divination, which is pretty cool. Imagine going through ancient civilizations and seeing how they translated the markings of Delphox to try and escape disaster or predict a bountiful harvest. Now it evolves from effeminate to gender ambiguous with its Mega Evolution, which has enhanced Mega Delphox's psychic abilities. Its fighting style consists of disorienting onlookers with its magic, all the while remaining calm and collected, enabling it to deliver precise blows to dazzled opponents. The two lit branches that float beside it move by their own will as if they were alive, but can be skillfully controlled by Mega Delphox, allowing it to coordinate moves with them and even combine their flames to the ones it spits from its mouth into a massive, all-consuming fireball, all while standing on a broom that it's riding. I did not ask how big the room is. I said I cast Fireball. Honestly, they cooked so hard with these Megas, I'm telling you, I don't even have nostalgia for them. They're just genuinely baller. I mean, how can you be upset at a witch surfer bearded witch fox? It's just kind of dope. Unfortunately, the only downside is that it might also be related to witch hunts and the burning of witches, which I guess isn't a downside for the Pokemon, but just for history in general, which gets incredibly weird because there's been a lot of questioning on whether or not they actually burned or drowned anyone, and if they just flat out murdered them, which, to be entirely fair, all of the witch hunts were just flat out murders, yeah, honestly. Men at that time just did not like a woman having any sort of say-so in influence or anything else in the slightest and wanted to eliminate them from gaining any power. I think they even targeted a lot of widows, since the widows would have inherited property from their spouse at the moment of their spouse's death. And the people of that time apparently said that that was a big no-no. Honestly, they likely just killed women just because they knew how to breathe. Let's be real, it was a terrible time in history. Last of the French starters, we have Froakie. We can find it sitting safely above the rest of the Pokemon on a pillar in Wild Zone 16, acting like the ninja that it is, as it is effectively out of immediate sight and will disappear when noticed. The delicate yet flexible bubbles called Frubbles reduce the damage Froakie takes from attacks, even works as a fantastic cushion when falling from high places, even for humans. Also, I think it was used at one point to plug the ears of people in the manga when there was a hypnotizing voice that was trying to hypnotize the group. Despite its carefree attitude, it is vigilant of its surroundings. It uses a happy-go-lucky look as an act to trick its enemies, but will suddenly drop the facade without warning and overwhelm its foes with its blinding speed. It is both light and strong, making it capable of jumping incredibly high, as you would expect of a frog. Its bubbling white foam is a reference to frog foam nests, created by some species such as the Tungara frog and gray foam nest tree frog to protect eggs, though this is also done by whipping a combination of secreted proteins, eggs, and water with their hind legs during mating itself. The female releases a fluid containing specialized surfactant proteins, I could not get that right on the first try, which the male mixes with air and water to create a stable, antiseptic, and protective foam structure for the eggs. Aren't you happy we can hopefully assume this isn't what Froakie is doing at all, and it's just whatever surfactant it is? The foam is kind of like a backpack and is even used as a hood in the anime, which could be in resemblance to thieves, as we would expect of its representation of rogues and ninjas. Frogadier is a nimble and swift Pokemon. It can scale a tower exceeding 2,000 feet, 600 meters, in 1 minute. That's a calculable feat, hold on. 60 minutes multiplied by 600 meters, and we get 36,000 meters an hour, which is calculable to 36 kilometers an hour, or 22.36 miles per hour, which is assuming we're just gonna ignore gravity, which is what I'm doing today. I cannot be asked to do so. Now, Frogadier can also throw bubble-coated pebbles at targets up to 100 feet or 30 meters away. It can confound opponents by leaping about ceilings or into trees. Frogadier is an expert on creating battle strategies that make use of the terrain, and due to this, it will never miss its mark when throwing bubble-coated pebbles. Those pebbles are effectively caltrops, a rogue's best friend if they want to non-magically help keep their party from being surprised at night, or when you want to reduce their speed by half on a failed dexterity saving throw. Someone correct me on that. I haven't run traditional D&D in forever, and have just been running Pokemon D&D set in Alola. Hint, hint, come watch Star Signs. There's a whole playlist. Lastly, the spiked protrusions above its eyes may have been inspired by horned frogs from the genera Megofreeze and Ceratofreeze. I'm just stumbling on Latin today. I apologize. Alright, we're on Greninja, and honestly, it is at this point in writing where I started to lose my mind, because I once again misjudged how long of a video this would be, but I refuse to back down at this point and break up the video. This will be one video. Greninja can compress water into various weapons to slice up enemies, most commonly in the form of throwing stars that can split through metal. It has additionally been shown creating water katana and water kunai in both the animated series and Super Smash Bros. An elusive Pokemon, Greninja's movements are swift, rapid, and graceful, akin to those of a ninja, because it is one. It even uses clone jutsu in the anime, which is a really cool scene. It uses this speed, though, to confound and toy with enemies while slicing them up with the sharpest water shurikens it can create. It can also create shurikens from the mucus it excretes from its thighs for sharp projectiles that cut steel cables. Imagine just getting spit on and killed at the same time. The ultimate insult, even though it's not spit and it is just mucus secretion and it's from the thighs. Exemplified in the anime, Greninja's tongue is extremely long and many times its own height, and it's strong enough to catch and hold a human. However, it usually keeps its tongue wrapped around its neck like a scarf. Doing so exposes its tongue to air movements, allowing Greninja to detect enemies it otherwise could not see. Through an occurrence called the bond phenomenon, yeah, I'm not skipping Ash Greninja, brought on by the bonds between people and Pokemon, certain Greninja, such as Ash's, can tap into a miraculous source of power in battles where they need to break their limits, something that has only occurred once, several hundred years ago in recorded history. Ash's Greninja's legs have strengthened, greatly increasing its speed. It becomes difficult to see and can defeat opponents in a flash. The large water shuriken on its back is the symbol of a perfect transformation. Before this state is reached, Ash's Greninja is covered in a turbulent veil of water. Now, it is incredibly important to note that even before Legends ZA, this was directly expressed time and time again within the anime to be completely separate from Mega Evolution altogether. Although Bond Phenomenon could be technically considered canonical to the games, as there is an entire event where you could have gotten this Greninja as a gift. This whole thing, though, is a bit of a mess since it absolutely outshadowed our other two starters and is a phenomenon not granted to any other Pokemon so far whatsoever. And I'm not complaining that Greninja got it. It's incredibly special. It's dope. It feels unique. It exemplifies the connection between people and Pokemon alongside the power of Aura, and how even though he's best friends with Pikachu, they don't quite have the same exact outlook on life. Not until Alola, I do suppose, but that's neither here nor there, and it is an entirely different conversation to get to. For now, we move on to its other form, Mega Greninja, who clings upside down to a giant six-pointed water shuriken that floats by spinning at high speeds, created from mucus secreted from a gelatinous membrane. And no, I am not calculating the speeds necessary for this shuriken to be spinning in order to stay airborne while carrying a 40-kilogram creature. I use the calculator, which estimates it to be about 34 to 56 miles per hour, or 54.7 to 90 kilometers an hour, which is honestly no surprise, but there's definitely more nuances to this that I did not want to deal with and just, again, wanted to use a calculator for. Mega Evolution has significantly enhanced its reflexes, and as a result, it has foregone stealth, showcasing its confidence in its abilities or capabilities and determination to win no matter what. By intentionally revealing itself, it provokes opponents into attacking, and its sharp reflexes enable it to both react accordingly and strike first. The mere sight of Mega Greninja clinging to its giant water shuriken is able to distract opponents, allowing it to preemptively render them unable to attack by binding them with its long tongue. Once its opponents are immobilized, it charges at them to strike with its massive shuriken. And yeah, I too would be surprised by a shuriken larger than my body not having a shadow under it, but rather having an entire living creature ready to slice me in half with said shuriken. As its species name implies, Greninja is also based on a ninja. Japanese culture associates frogs and toads with ninjas based on the folk story, The Tale of the Gallant Jiraiya. And yes, that is also where Jiraiya got his name in Naruto, especially as the original story did have a ninja who could shapeshift into a giant toad. Literally 1-for-1, baby. The last notable bit of information is that its Japanese name Gekuga, which can be broken down to Gekko, Gekko, and Koga-ryu, which means croak, moonlight, and school of Koga, as a ninjutsu, which was a set tradition that originated in what was Koga and now is Koka in the Shiga prefecture. So it's a ninja running in the moonlight, trained in the Koga ninjutsu tradition. That's why Koga has his name in Gen 1. Wow, that is... I don't know why that just dawned on me. Whatever, either way, to my understanding, this ninjutsu tradition involved a strong use of guerrilla warfare and surprise attacks as part of a rebellion against the shogunate, which would also explain why Koga is evil in the manga, going against the Pokemon League. Got it. Thus solidifying, though, the dark typing even more for Greninja, as if attacking from the shadows wasn't seen as an underhanded method already to then give it that typing. We've made it to my Robin Hoot, once again choosing my grass starter in one of, if not my favorite region, Alola, as we talk about Rowlet. Rowlet is a nocturnal Pokemon. Wait, where's my Rowlet? Right here, literally hanging right next to me. Rowlet is a nocturnal Pokemon who stores energy during the day through photosynthesis, though as we will find out with its evolutions, this will not make it an autotroph. It is in fact a hunting Pokemon, a bird of prey. It approaches opponents by silently gliding before unleashing a volley of kicks. This Pokemon can rotate its head almost 180 degrees and has excellent night vision, as you would expect of an owl. Its feathers are as sharp as daggers, which it launches at foes from the air. It feels most relaxed in tight, dark spaces. As such, it is known to even nestle into its trainer's bag or the front of their jacket. Just, God, I love Rowlet so freaking much. It's so goddamn cute. I need to make merch of it and put Rowlet on it. I'm going to keep it in my jacket for the entirety of this section. Now, by the way, yes, there's tons of merch that I just never talk about, such as the Worm Pope. May he help us praise the Lord Arceus. And as a side note between you and me, the craziest thing is that the merch was commissioned before the Pope died. And then the day I released it was later in the day when I found out that the Pope did die. And I just was like, oops, I had nothing to do with that, I swear. While Rowlet is inspired by adorable barn owls, and more specifically the common barn owl, it even more specifically is likely inspired by the Pueo owl, which is a subspecies of short-eared owl endemic to Hawaii, and is famously seen as a physical form that ancestor spirits may take in Hawaiian culture. They are also most commonly associated with battle, functioning as a protector during war or danger. Thank you, Direct Sights, I believe from Maui. They're even different in that they are primarily active during the day, which explains Rowlet's whole deal with being a photosynthesizer and being active during the day to photosynthesize. Dartrix is alert and sensitive to the presence of others around it, and is capable of launching attacks on unseen enemies behind it. It propels its blade quills at enemies or prey with astounding precision, and by bending the feathers, it can even alter the trajectory of its strikes. It is known to be narcissistic by nature, spending a lot of time grooming its feathers to maintain its appearance. And even in Pokopia, they gave it a pretty narcissistic personality that uses a lot of consonants for some reason. This compulsion to stay prim and proper will occasionally lead it to losing focus when its plumage is ruffled or dirty, even retiring from battle to preen. It has been described as a bit of a bird brain, as it has a tendency to make mistakes, and when it does, it sometimes tries to cover it up, which ends up making the situation worse. A trainer who does help Dartrix through this difficult stage of life will allow it to reach its full strength. Conversely, it will refuse to listen to a trainer who doesn't diligently help it groom. In Hisui, Dartrix tends to expose itself to sunlight in order to gain power, presumably due to the region's cold climate, which only allows it to have a different form thanks to said harsh climate. Now, I actually want to talk about its Hisuian form first because it ties everything together nicely that way. Hisuian Decidui is said to have a stalwart, fierce personality, although it will tolerate those who do not act hostile towards it. It has a nomadic lifestyle, wandering the Hisui region in search of food. Unlike its lowland counterpart, it prefers to fight at close range in order to overwhelm enemies. Its legs can deliver powerful kicks that can knock down trees and destroy boulders. Its signature strategy is to fly towards its foes to unleash kicks, then use its hidden arrow quills in order to deliver multiple attacks in a row. It is once again fitting into that role though of the Ronin, much like Samurott, though this is a more noble or benevolent version of a Ronin, or independent, non-negative sense. The unfortunate thing is that this climate has forced it to take on a more autumnal coloration, so that way it can still absorb enough sunlight for power. That's kind of why the leaves change, different wavelengths, so on and so forth. But that power is secondary to its physical prowess. And even more unfortunate is that since it is incredibly combative, this could be a strong reason as to why they fell to extinction, and we would find them taking a more ranged approach to battles in the modern day. Not only this, but we see it change from a grass fighting type into a grass ghost type in terms of historical record to the modern day, and this in turn is significant of extinct stilt owls who, as you would expect, showed off their incredibly long owl legs, which, yeah, owls have really strangely long legs. They're hiding a lot under those feather-dense bodies. It's also important to note now that the common barn owl we mentioned is also nicknamed the ghost owl, likely because of the hooting it does, being a bit ominous at times, and hard to find if you hear it, as it could have a bit of a range. And I speak from marginal experience with owls at night, because it does get a little bit spooky if you're not expecting it, and you can't see 5 feet in front of you because of how dark it is. Now, I could talk about Ainu culture with this, but I would much rather skip over that for now and maybe come back to that with a professional regarding Ainu culture in the future, rather than accidentally spread misinformation. In the modern day though, extending from Decidueye's hood are 2 vines that when pulled, close the hood further over Decidueye's face and improves its focus. The vines can also be used as bowstrings. It is cool and cautious by nature, but it begins to panic if surprised. It can hide from opponents by masking its presence, allowing it to attack unaware foes. It takes only a 1/10 of a second for it to pluck, aim, and fire an arrow quill from its wings. It is not only quick, but also accurate, capable of striking targets over half a mile away. That in particular takes a well-skilled individual, aware of the wind and how that will affect the arrow over a long distance, though there is one other Pokemon that makes it even more impressive that we will talk about later. And to complete the connection to the spiritual idea behind this Pokemon in tradition, its signature move is Spirit Shackle, firing not at the Pokemon, but rather its shadow, which its direct translation is Shadow Shackle if I remember correctly, damaging the Pokemon and preventing it from escaping. Some real Dr. Facilier type stuff where the shadow is like the soul or a extension of the body. Up next, Litten is a solitary Pokemon that does not typically display its emotions, and it is usually advised that it not be given too much affection. It will scratch those who try to pet it without earning its trust, which takes some time to develop. And as I like to say, cats are effectively a lesson in consent, whereas dogs, you could just mess with them, or people constantly think you could just mess with them no matter what, as much as you want, which is wrong. Respect your animal's safety and what they want and their boundaries. Learn them. But cats, yeah, they'll switch on you pretty quickly because you will learn to respect their boundaries. While grooming, Litten collects fur inside of its stomach. By setting the stored fur alight, it can spit fireballs that change based on how it coughs. Its fur produces flammable oils, and when it begins shedding, it burns all its fur in a blaze. Its Japanese name, Nyabi, literally just combines the sound a cat makes, nya, with tabby, which ties us to the macro tabby in particular that it resembles. These are also called tiger cats, which further explains additional striping we might see and its later evolutions. A really cool detail is that on the face of Litten, we can find the alchemical symbol for sulfur, which is an incredibly flammable element. Litten's flammable fur oil may be a reference to the Bakeneko. While cat fur does naturally contain oil, the Bakeneko are believed to specifically drink flammable lamp oil. This association came about during the Japanese Edo period, likely because a lot of lamps were filled with cheap fish oil that attracted actual cats. I cannot express how often I just want a quick can of tuna and my cats will approach me as though I would share any of my lean protein. They won't even eat it anyway, they just kind of stare at it. Hanging from Torracat's neck is a round bell-like organ, which is yellow with an orangish core. This fiery organ is actually Torracat's flame sac, which produces the flames it uses to attack. When it does so, the organ sometimes flares with wing-like projections to the sides. The fire bell responds to Torracat's emotions, blazing hotter according to its spirits, and rings brightly whenever it spews fire or in the heat of battle. And as seen in the episode Exhibition Unmasked, its fire bell is also capable of absorbing flames from outside sources and converting them into its own power. I'm also making this clear right now, do not add a jingly bell to your cat's collar. Do not add any jingly thing to it whatsoever. Sometimes dogs are okay with it, but for cats, that can seriously stress them out. Obviously, this is a general statement, but cats are naturally ambush predators, so it's within their genes to get anxious if it is impossible to move silently and stealthily. Moving forward, Torracat's mane acts as a sensory organ, allowing it to navigate in darkness and sense hidden foes, basically like an extended version of whiskers. It is also an indicator of its well-being, standing on end when it is in a good mood and lying flat when it's not feeling well. Torracat loves to battle, and its relentless onslaught causes others to lose the will to fight. And so just as I have often shared in other videos, I share now, this is why cats are often at the quote-unquote top of the quote-unquote food chain. Cats are the I will kill you if you bother me and you better fight to the death because I have decided that we are fighting to the death no matter what type of creature. And to me, there is no greater example than a bobcat, which bears actively stay away from, as while bears can fight and win, the fight is not worthwhile and can result in some serious injuries. So by technicality, bobcats are higher on the food chain if you want to follow a food chain, which you shouldn't. Food webs are more accurate. Also, I still can't believe that my future wife thought that she could pick up a bobcat, not realizing it was a bobcat, thinking that it was actually just a stray cat, and she almost brought it home. Outside of battle, Torracat sometimes behaves like a spoiled child in front of its trainer and other Pokemon, showcasing a more affectionate side to itself in comparison to its pre-evolved form. It, however, is still fickle and fitted with sharp claws, leaving those it has grown to trust marked with scratches. Kitty cat be doing kitty cat things, who would have guessed? Coming down from the top rope with an elbow drop, we have Incineroar! Not just a wrestler, but a heel wrestler. An underhanded showboaty, overconfident wrestler deliberately performing in a way to make the crowd boo and hiss at them. And of course, it is often the heels that end up being some of the most popular in wrestling. They are the villain, they are the antagonist, and Incineroar plays that part perfectly, as it not only gains the dark type, but also has its signature move, Darkest Lariat, and malicious Moonsault, with the Lariat being a finisher move, and the Moonsault actually being called Hyper Dark Crusher, again, from the top rope. If you can't tell, I kinda do love the showy, non-competitive wrestling, even though I never watch it. It's basically anime for country people at the end of the day, so you know, go make friends with wrestling fans, you weebs. It works better than you think. Incineroar's flame belt is produced from within its body and bursts from its navel and waist as its fighting spirit rises. The flames can reach a temperature of up to 3,600 degrees Fahrenheit. In addition to spewing fire from its navel, belly button, it uses ferocious kicks and punches while being an expert at no-holds-barred battles. In other words, anything goes battles are its forte. Kick 'em in the nuts. Actually, that's not actually allowed, technically, if I remember correctly. This Pokemon disregards the safety of its opponents and onlookers, sometimes striking the opposing trainer with attacks. Incineroar usually attacks first by unleashing ferocious punches and flinging furious kicks, and then it finishes the opponent by spewing fire from its navel. It is a violence Pokemon with rough, aggressive, and egotistical behavior. It will even sometimes ignore its trainer's orders when it's not in the mood to listen, almost like a wrestler not listening to their manager for the drama. Despite this, it finds fighting unworthy opponents boring and gets motivated to fight challenging ones. Weak or injured opponents also cause them to lose the desire to fight, which others sometimes use to their advantage. It values the attention of the crowd, as Incineroar's spirit goes up while the crowd is excited or falters when the crowd is bored. When Incineroar's fighting spirit rises, so does the temperature around its navel waist. While it tends to act like a heal, Incineroar is very happy internally when receiving the admiration of children or young Pokemon. It is also willing to help out children and small Pokemon, further showing its hidden soft side, again showing us the heal is not actually evil. It is a personality put on for the ring, the show, the art itself, and if I can ever play a villain in something, I would have so much fun. I also tried to main Incineroar for a while in Smash, and that did not work out. Instead, I somehow managed to make Kazuya and Lucario work for me really well. Moving on. Popplio has complete control over its water bubbles, which it snorts from its nose and uses as part of its battle strategy as an acrobatic fighter. On land, it uses the elasticity of its bubbles to perform acrobatic stunts and jumps. It practices daily with increasingly larger water bubbles, with the sheer force of them bursting dealing a lot of damage. It can also swim at 25 miles per hour or 40 kilometers an hour, which is really odd to give those as speeds when water speed is measured by knots as a more accurate measurement then, so that amounts to 21.72 knots, which is typical of large cruise ships, moderate speed powerboats that do wakeboarding, and some container ships. Now, Popplio is a sea lion, plain and simple, at least here. An adorable one at that. But we also kind of get circus clown acrobat vibes from all of this as we look at its nose and the sea lion circus trick where it balances a ball on its nose. Of course, we can also tie it to the Hawaiian monk seal, which is endemic to Hawaii, and I realize I've used that word and I haven't explained it. It effectively means that they can only be found in Hawaii. Endemic is like you can only find it in that area that they're in. I just found out I missed something, and you're going to learn something with me. When Popplio is viewed standing up from the front with its head pointed up, it resembles the alchemical symbol for Mercury, which represented water in alchemy. This is to complement Litton's forehead resembling the symbol for sulfur and Rowlet resembling the symbol for salt. Like, I always talk about the ties of alchemy in Pokemon, but it really is just like everywhere. Brionne is a skillful dancer. While it normally learns to dance from members of its colony, Brionne can also learn to dance from humans. It works diligently to memorize each dance through imitation and gets excited when it sees a dance it does not know. It is capable of dancing in perfect time with others, even if it's never danced with them before. Large groups of their kind can be seen dancing together on moonlit nights when the sea is calm, sometimes being led by the singing of a Primarina, which we don't see the Brionne in it, but we do see Primarina singing to a group of Pokemon within Snap. Brionne, though, has a caring nature. If its trainer is feeling down, it will perform a dance to cheer them up. And I genuinely have a deep fascination with creatures that can dance. Like, I goofy dance at best, and I'm okay with that. But man, it's really mesmerizing to see a good dance from animals or people. Choreography in general, a well-choreographed fight is just as mesmerizing. As Brionne dances, it creates water balloons in a variety of colors. Its battle strategy consists of dancing while creating said water balloons. The dance confuses the opponents, and during this weakness, Brionne slaps the balloons towards the target, where they then explode. Brionne really is just hitting you with the think fast chuckle nuts. Only those who have earned its trust can see this Pokemon when it's sad. It will otherwise always wear a mask, acting cheerful and never allowing its sorrow to show. Wow, thanks Pokemon Company, you gave us a Pokemon that masks. That's not depressing at all. As a side, I stopped masking like years ago, and man, personally has it helped making sure I'm healthier mentally and not wasting energy on that effort. Of course, through this though, as we move forward, we would actually relate this to idols, especially as we get into Japanese or even Korean idols who are so strictly managed that it kind of makes you sick to effectively find out that they aren't really being treated like proper humans, but rather a machine meant to expel entertainment while not having any kind of proper relationships with others. Up next, we do get the fantastical performer in the form of Primarina. It uses water balloons and its voice as its main weapons. Because its voice is instrumental in its battle strategy, its care should be a priority for trainers. Lots of throat coat, tea, and honey. At least for me. I don't know what would be okay for a sea lion mermaid thing. The melody it uses has been passed down for generations. Water balloons are released as it dances and are controlled by its voice. In the moonlight, the balloons glitter and create a beautiful scene. However, some of the balloons are explosive and triggered by touch. This theatrical Pokemon considers every battle a stage and uses the non-explosive balloons as platforms to tease opponents. I love that so much. Treat every battle like a stage is such a sick thing. Imagine a sea minefield being brought to the full space around you and not knowing which ones are explosive. So you just have to assume they are all explosive until one bounces you into another one and you just bite the dust. That should instill a level of fear in anyone that fights this Pokemon, especially as it effectively creates the Dragon Ball Z Spirit Bomb of bubbles. Like, look at that thing. It is huge, which of course is called Oceanic Operetta in its English translation, but it's so much cooler in Japanese. It is literally translated to Sea God's Symphonia. Like, don't get me wrong, Sinister Arrow Raid from Decidueye is cool, but it really doesn't hold a match to the names and visuals of our other two starters here. Primarina's fairy typing can easily be attributed to the fairy tale nature of its singing and mermaid or siren aesthetic. It even gets blonde hair in its shiny form to complete the mermaid look and entice sailors to their doom. Although, you could also tie it to Selkies, which are able to shapeshift between seal and human forms by removing or putting on their seal skin, which explains why we get a sea lion to start out this line of Pokemon. We are in Galar, and the finish line is getting closer and closer in sight. I haven't felt as manic in a while, and it means that I'm doing the right thing. Grookey has two leaf-shaped hair tufts that hold a stick on the top of its head. The stick used to be a branch from a forest where troops of Grookey lived, and it has a special power due to being exposed to the energy within its body. This energy helps Grookey's stick grow harder and more flexible. Besides using it when attacking, it beats this stick rhythmically against the surfaces of all sorts of objects. The more fun it has, the livelier the rhythm. This has been observed to cause grass to grow and wilted flowers and leaves to seemingly regain their color. In the episode Beyond Chivalry, aiming to be a leek master, it can even restore weakened plant-like Pokemon such as Bellsprout. Grookey's green fur can create energy from the sunlight through photosynthesis, and it is said to be full of boundless curiosity, enjoying being in high places and rhythmic things such as music or dancing, which felt like a little bit like a dating bio for a second there. Now, not only do we have visual similarities to the squirrel monkey as per the arm coloration in specific, but we also get the macaque inspiration to come back as they drum objects in rhythmic manners to show social dominance. First I beat this drum, then I beat you. Don't ever look at my grub like that ever again. The entire tie of music and plant growth is expressed here, which gets a little bit weird overall to explain, but it's technically true. To explain, the music itself doesn't really matter. What does matter is thought to be the volume itself, because plants are aware of vibrations as they sense their surroundings. And with loud enough noise, it should be promoting their growth as they find themselves being surrounded by potential predators. So the easy solution is to just grow more so those predators can eat parts of it while the plant itself continues to live on, hopefully. There's definitely way more to this, but that's like the hyper simple version of it that also doesn't require me to go on a 10-minute conversation to explain a bunch of technicalities in a science that isn't quite accepted officially and is often rejected by the public, as people don't want to believe in even the idea that plants may have some level of consciousness or awareness. Thwackey can use its two sticks to create a rhythmic beat. The faster a rhythm Thwackey creates, the more respect it earns from its peers. Often, when it drums out rapid beats in battle, it will get so caught up in the rhythm that it does not realize its opponent has been knocked out. This action will also cause Thwackey to even ignore its own trainer's commands. To further develop its sense of rhythm, it constantly uses it in its daily life. It can always feel a beat, and it walks while swaying back and forth to this beat, along with drumming with its sticks. In a One Stick Wonder episode, Thwackey can groom its friends to cheer them up, and this is its way to show friendship and trust, which is no different than what we would see in real life. Chimpanzees, for example, grooming each other is a very important social interaction that maintains status, builds friendship, and allows them to keep close bonds with each other, all while reducing stress as a form of friendship therapy. Now come here, there's spaghetti in your mustache that needs to get washed out. Also, musical drum beats have historically been used in so many cultures throughout the world, let alone music in general, as it bolsters the mind and unifies a team well before a fight may break out. Rillaboom always carries its signature drum with it on its back, and pulls it out when engaged in battle. This bass drum is crafted from a tree stump, with several thick branch stumps protruding from it, which form both the legs of the bass drum as well as mid and high toms. You could also compare it to a taiko drum. Now, Rillaboom also carries 2 drumsticks in its cuffs and takes them out to beat the drum. By drumming, Rillaboom can tap into the power of its special tree stump. The roots of the stump follow the direction of its drumming in battle. In a troop of Rillaboom, the one with the best drumming technique is the leader. Those who challenge each other for leadership usually settle it through a drum battle. It has a kind and calm disposition, valuing harmony within its group. It is very sensitive towards discord that could threaten the group's harmony, so it keeps a strict watch for such actions. Any offenders who drum up discord will be strictly disciplined by Rillaboom until they have learned their lesson. Due to its strong sense of unity, it will ferociously defend its allies from trouble. Now, Rillaboom is the long-haired drummer fit with patterns in its overall style to something you might even relate loosely to marching bands. But especially when we dig into its GMax form fit with a full drum set, and given the UK-inspired setting of Galar and James Turner's British background, who is the artist who created this Pokemon, GMax Rillaboom's concept may have been influenced by a famous 2007 advertising campaign for Cadbury chocolate in the United Kingdom, which depicted a gorilla playing drums to the tune of Phil Collins' "In the Air Tonight." My hair's a mess. Now, I definitely got ahead of myself there, but like, oh well. It doesn't help that its GMax move is also called Drum Solo. We can also talk about a fact that we mentioned earlier, which is that animals will save their energy and instead be loud rather than actually fight. So in the case of gorillas, they beat their chests like drums to intimidate each other and steal each other's ladies. As for its GMax form, the power building up inside it compels it to perform transcendental drumming techniques, controlling its drumsticks as if they were its own limbs. The sounds it makes can reach across oceans and other regions, and it is said that the beat can cause whoever hears it to start dancing uncontrollably. I, of course, immediately started thinking of Tom Hardy and Transcendental Cha-Cha-Cha, or Cha-Cha, because of that. Moving on to Scorbunny, who loves to run and is filled with energy. A warm-up run can cause the fire energy in Scorbunny to start coursing through its body, allowing it to fight at full power. It has a sac in its chest that contains fire energy, which it uses to generate heat from the special pads on the soles of its feet and its nose, once it is ready to fight. The pads on Scorbunny's feet can get so hot that it is capable of using them to start small fires and burn opponents with a kick. If they have enough energy, then that flame can burn hotter and become blue in color, as we see in Snap. Despite throwing Illumina orbs at other fire types, Scorbunny is the only one to produce a blue flame because of this. In the episode Best Friend Worst Nightmare, its heat pads are shown to be delicate enough that they can also thaw others out of ice. By using its powerful legs, Scorbunny can run and jump around its opponents to confuse and disorient them, and in the anime, it's said the soles on Scorbunny's feet are believed to bring good luck. It's also really weird because it burns its feet on the hot desert sand, which might mean that the different type of heat cannot be absorbed, or it's just not learned how to do so. Now, the whole rabbit feet situation with Scorbunny is literally just rabbit foot stuff in real life, but nobody really remembers that rabbit's feet are supposed to primarily give good luck in fertility, because, you know, they're good at multiplying. The yellow mark over its nose is inspired by a Japanese character design trope in which a character has a bandage over their nose to show their rambunctious personality. Its fire type may take inspiration from the relatively high body temperature of rabbits, which range from 100 to 103 Fahrenheit, 37 to 39 Celsius, or to Tale 316 of the Jataka tales, in which a rabbit jumped into a fire as an offering but was not burnt by the flames. The Jataka tales are also considered one of the oldest pieces of Buddhist literature, and I had not realized that until recently, meaning that I need to get my hands on a copy of their tales in a book. Who would have guessed? The guy who loves nature really, really likes Buddhism. Also just looked at its base stat total, and it's just shy of 316 at a total of 310. I would also like to say the pads on the bottom of the feet might represent the soles of shoes or even foot bandages, especially as this line pulls from the inspiration of soccer more and more. That, and the evolution is literally called Raboot in English, which has the word boot in it. Raboot's fur protects it from the cold and allows it to use hotter fire moves, which it delivers through the yellow marks on its forehead and its soles. It takes great pride in its kicking moves and usually practices its footwork by kicking berries from a tree's branches and then juggling them with its feet. Kind of makes you think of hacky sack games, which I have no idea what they're called anywhere else, and at least it's better than the game that's called Testicle Toss. While training its kicking attacks, Raboot tries to avoid using its arms, tucking them into its fur, making it a great partner Pokemon for Sanji. This also effectively prevents Raboot from losing body heat. It is also capable of delivering powerful headbutts once its flames heat up within its forehead. After all, that yellow band isn't just for show as part of its total tracksuit design. This entire line does also get the Libero ability, which is effectively free or freedom. More specifically, as it ties incredibly well into this Pokemon overall, in terms of football, a Libero is a defender who plays behind the rest of the back line and is responsible for covering and sweeping across the spaces behind other defenders. The role grew to include passing forwards after a regain, often to launch a counterattack, and eventually driving into midfield with the ball or running forward off the ball to instigate an attack. It headbutts, doesn't use its hands, it has powerful kicks, meets that exact idea of Libero very perfectly in terms of its movements. It makes sense why they're so closely tied together. All of this actually coming to a head when we reach Cinderace, who, by juggling a pebble with its feet, it can transform said pebble into a burning soccer ball. By putting a spin on the ball, it can launch attacks that its opponents struggle to evade. The shots it fires can leave an opponent scorched. Now, Cinderace has great offensive and defensive capabilities, being one of the best at explosive force, jumping capability, and kicking power. Due to its strong core and great balance, it can unleash powerful kicks from any position. In battle, it uses artful footwork to feint and throw its opponents off. This move allows Cinderace to blind its opponents and keeps them at bay. Now, it can get pumped up with excitement should it get cheered on, however, it may get itself in trouble if it starts showboating. Despite easily losing its cool, it will follow the orders of its trainer without flaw, once again relating back to sportsmanship and rules within a game. Cinderace is the only known Pokemon capable of learning the moves Pyro Ball and Court Change, which is a little funny to imagine two Pokemon being super sportsmanlike and actively agreeing to trading sides even if they're walking into a field of toxic spikes. As seen in the episode A Flood of Torrential Gains, the tuft of red hair on Cinderace's head changes in color when it changes its type thanks to the Libero ability. This Pokemon loves what it does so much that instead of becoming larger, save for its newly massive ears, when it G-Maxes, it just pours that energy into a massive fireball with its face on it. Using its well-honed techniques in Fighting Spirit, G-Max Cinderace can make its fireball chase after opponents almost like it has a mind of its own, so it will never miss. And once it does hit, it completely roasts the opponent. G-Max Cinderace is also said to have the strongest leg strength of any Pokemon. Even without its giant Power Ball, it can still overwhelm even a Dynamax Pokemon by delivering powerful kicking moves. Also, I have no idea why, but I'm getting mad Gurren Lagann vibes from this, maybe because of the crossed arms and the coloration and kind of generic design ties. Surprisingly, if you notice, I did not say I chose Grookey. To this day, I still say that I like the Grookey line more, but I think the Sobble line is still cool as I did choose the small crybaby as my starter. It tricked me into loving its pathetic little self as my need to protect was too strong to ignore. Now, Sobble can run around as both a quadruped and a biped and use its forearms as, well, arms. It has the ability to change the patterns and colors on its body when touching water, allowing it to camouflage itself. Exactly what you would expect from a Pokemon inspired by the male veiled chameleon, which we could kind of see in color patterning, but not exactly colors, assuming I didn't find a good picture of it. Sobble is also known to be very cautious in nature. Due to being a bit timid, when it gets nervous or embarrassed, it secretes water from its body like sweat in order to disappear into its surroundings. If they feel threatened, it will start bawling and spreading its tears around the area. These tears are said to be as potent as 100 onions, and can cause anyone near it to start crying uncontrollably, which it will use as a distraction in order to escape. and assuming the tears do work like onions, then it means there is a chemical that is evaporating to then irritate the pain receptors in our eyes. It's technically entirely harmless, but just one onion hurts enough as is. I don't want to know what 100 of them would feel like. Also, it turns out that lizards find the scent of onion and garlic to be too overwhelming and hate it, so people will use that to keep them away. That itself may be an inspiration for Sobble here, as Pokemon likes to twist things around pretty often, as we've discussed. Now, Sobble does get berries to eat by shooting them down with bullets of water that it spurts from its mouth, with its aim being perfect. This could be inspired by a number of different creatures, from a super projectile pea-shooting insect called a sharpshooter, to spitting cobras, archerfish, and of course, what is likely the primary inspiration, horned lizards, who can shoot jets of blood from their eye sockets in self-defense against predators. The lizards contract the muscles lining the veins around their eyes abruptly, resulting in increased pressure that helps in the formation of jets. These blood jets or squirts can travel up to a distance of around 3 feet and contain chemicals that are toxic to dogs, wolves, and coyotes. This ties in as a great final resort for Sobble, but of course, instead of blood, it is choosing to stay hidden when forced to fight and sharpshooting the competition with a good critical hit of water. Drizzile uses special pores in its palms to secrete moisture, which it forms into water balloons that it uses to attack, which is a really weird way of saying it's a nerd that has sweaty hands. Now, Drizzile is highly intelligent, capable of devising strategies or using its surroundings to enact hit-and-run tactics. However, it is also exceptionally lazy and prefers to not do anything unless it has to. It makes its home inside tree hollows or rocks and is very cautious, laying out traps everywhere around its territory to keep enemies out. I am getting heavy NEET vibes from this Pokemon. Then again, it kinda does look like a moody, awkward teenager that would yell at their parents to stay out of their room because they're busy playing Minecraft. Like its evolutionary relatives, it also has the ability to camouflage itself when wet. Wait, hold on. I didn't fully process that earlier. They can only camouflage themselves when they're wet. I just kind of assumed it could blend with water well, or it turned invisible while crying. But as a second check on the Pokédex, yeah, it seems like in order to camouflage itself, it does need to get wet, which I guess you could then say happens because the watery sheen on its body works as a mirror to reflect light all around it, effectively creating a cloak that makes it invisible because all light is bouncing off of it. Because all light is bouncing off of that mirror that it is put around its body. Now, Drizzile typically moves on all fours. Again, it can still stand on its 2 legs, and it will use its long, slimy tongue to first attack its prey with blinding speeds before finishing it off with great skill. Its Japanese name, Chimerion, which could be translated to Clammy Chameleon. I could sing that one Chameleon song, but if you're anything like me, it is already stuck in your head. We're ready to meet the British sniper spy chameleon, ready to assassinate political figures in the form of Inteleon. It has many hidden capabilities. It has darkly colored nictitating membranes that allow it to analyze an opponent's weak point, which, as we talked about earlier, those membranes would also be fantastic for keeping an eye on your target without needing to blink. Great for a sniper. These special lenses can also detect body heat. Once Inteleon finds a foe's weakness, it will start attacking. This also helps it precisely shoot water from its fingertips at Mach 3. 3 times faster than the speed of sound, mind you. The membrane on its back is capable of extending and allowing it to glide in the air. The blue streak on its tail hides sharp, retractable frills, which it uses similarly to a knife. It is highly intelligent, carefully thinking out strategies before entering combat to ensure a swift and decisive victory. It is also known to be quite chivalrous and is completely loyal to trainers it sees as worthy. It is, once again, literally a multifaceted, multi-tool spy. Take Lloyd Forger from Spy Family and just turn him into a Pokemon and you get an Inteleon through and through. Now, as seen in Pokemon Journeys, Inteleon can camouflage itself like its pre-evolved forms and has access to infrared vision. Despite Inteleon presenting itself as being a well-mannered Pokemon, it still retains its lazy side from its previous form and will choose to slack off when its trainer does not look at it. All of those abilities coalesce into its signature move, Snipe Shot, which deals damage and has an increased critical hit ratio. It is unaffected by moves and ability effects that draw in moves such as Follow Me and Storm Drain, meaning it will not get distracted, it will not miss its target, and it does not matter if you like to drink water Gastrodon, you are getting blasted. As a result of G-Maxing now, Inteleon's many hidden body tools have been enhanced. G-Max Inteleon can detect and gauge temperature, air pressure, wind, and humidity with its crest and nictitating membranes. Together with its sharp mind and its newly grown sniper tower, this extremely skilled sniper can figure out how to use gravity for a precise trajectory shot fired at Mach 7, again 7 times faster than the speed of sound. This allows it to hit even a moving berry that is 9 miles, 15 kilometers away. I can't even begin to comprehend the sheer skill of this, let alone the math, which of course then lets us understand just how intelligent Inteleon really is. Like, Pokemon really sat down and said, let's make the best sniper in history, the best of the modern day and the best I will ever be. It's the perfect flying lizard sniper spy, and I doubt we will ever see anything like this ever again in terms of the concept. Sure, we have gun-like Pokemon, but we have Get Down Mr. President the Lizard right here. Do not ask where it was on November 22nd, 1963 though. I am 64.5 pages deep into this script, I am out of coffee, and we are finally on Generation 9. Sprigatito is capricious and attention-seeking. It tends to sulk if ignored by people. It can rub its paws together to unleash a sweet, therapeutic aroma that mesmerizes anyone near it and causes its foes to stop battling. The scent becomes more potent when it is exposed to sunlight. This not only plays into the idea of plants with photosynthesis, but of course will also play into cats licking themselves as part of their hygiene in the sun. They don't want to stay wet, but they're looking to clean themselves and spread natural oils to keep their fur healthy. So the sun is helpful for making saliva evaporate, and of course, since it evaporates, it would release a scent. Sprigatito washes its face regularly to avoid drying out. As mentioned in the sleep style decks, it can spread this scent around by moving around as it sleeps, and it is believed Sprigatito does this to help itself and other Pokemon relax more easily. Now, it does appear to be based on a long-haired kitten or an Iberian lynx kitten. Its tufts and collar may be inspired by the Cinderace heraldic charge, which depicts a fleur-de-lis, I apologize for saying it wrong, issuing out of the head of a feline known as leopard in heraldry. It's an adorable sprig kitten that will become incredibly show-offy later on, so you bet this was the Pokemon that I chose. Something deep inside of me knew it would be some sort of performer before I even saw it evolve, and yes, I remember its name was Fleur de Mort when I first played. If anyone knows that reference and not just the translation, good job. As it evolves, there is a vine tucked inside of Feraligatr's fur, which has a hard, round, visible pink flower bud on the end, acting similarly to a boutonniere. It wields the vine and swings the bud to attack its foes in ways that could be compared to a yo-yo, which of course is exactly how it's used for entertainment as well when not in battle. And further than this, when not in use, the bud is kept on the left side of Feraligatr's chest near its neck. As mentioned in the sleep style decks, it plays with the bud while sleeping, and it is known to be intelligent, dexterous, mischievous, and like showing off, desiring attention and companionship from others. If its trainer refuses to give it attention, Feraligatr may misbehave by pulling pranks, such as tying the trainer with its vine while they are asleep. It's basically like any other cat Pokemon, but instead of being an absolute jerk, it decides to play a few pranks rather than immediately scratching your face. It also turns out that the entirety of its fur can become sharper, so touching it when it's upset might be a massive no-no, which, to be fair, again, should be respecting the space of animals just as much as you should be respecting the space of humans. Now, its face, hand, and feet coloration could draw inspiration from that of a Siamese cat or a Himalayan cat, or other cat breeds with point coloration. Its rogue-like behavior and appearance could also be based on a hero from a picaresque novel, a form of Spanish literature depicting rogue archetypes. The boot scallop patterns on Feraligatr's legs, together with its mischievous and cunning nature, may reference Puss in Boots, which you might know from Shrek but originates from a European tale of a trickster cat wearing, as you would guess, boots. Also, I think like the last Puss in Boots movie, The Last Wish, was like, was it Last Wish? Whatever one where he dies. It's such a sick movie. Genuinely amazing. And its name is hella Spanish, as its name is literally just flower cats, Flora Gato. But its final evolution, fit with the costume of the masquerade and the showiness to boot, Masquerada takes the stage. Meowscarada is said to be a talented magician. It carries a 4-petaled green flower, whose stem is hidden by the reflective fur on its keep, creating the illusion of floating. As seen in Horizons, the flower stem can be used to bind opponents in battle. Think of it like invisible wire or fishing line. Without the right light, you will not be able to see it. And the flower can blossom into a round, pollen-filled flower bomb. In a battle, Meowscarada uses skillful misdirection to stealthily plant these flower bombs onto various surfaces around its unaware foes before setting them off, catching their opponents off guard. The inspiration for this becomes clear when we realize the round 6-petaled bloom does resemble a pomegranate, culturally tied to Spanish regions like Granada, which also connects to its explosive motif via the grenades etymology. Okay, I was not a big fan of my hair today, like it's just not working out, and then, oh, now it's gone. I was gonna say I had a single curl at the top of my head. Either way, in visual, we not only get that masquerade, but also illusionists, jesters, and the harlequin of playing cards. Now, the masquerade ball tradition began in Burgundy and spread to France and Habsburg Spain, alongside influences from Mardi Gras masks and the cat-faced Naga, which, if this is truly the inspiration, would be wild, but we've heard worse. The Naga is a type of mask originated in Venice. The mask depicts the face of a cat and was historically worn by male prostitutes and crossdressers, particularly during the Carnival of Venice, which may explain what you might consider the gender-ambiguous presentation of this Pokemon. Of course, we finally get the Magician Trickster, or the Phantom Thief in its own right, granting it that dark typing and allowing Meowscarada to be yet another Pokemon that could join the Persona 5 team. As mentioned in the sleep-style decks, Meowscarada occasionally attempts to perform magic while it sleeps, however the performance tends to not go as planned. It has a proud, showy personality, however it is also sensitive and prone to jealousy. It can often be very attached to its trainer, and it will become upset if its trainer gives attention to other Pokemon. And it's okay, Meowscarada. You might not be as popular sometimes, but you can always stay consistent and build a good community, a little magician. I believe in you. Fuecoco's body contains a small flame sac which constantly leaks fire energy due to its size. The energy releases in the form of 2 bright yellow tufts of flame on top of its head. Should Fuecoco get excited, more of these tufts of flame may emerge and they are able to glow, of course. The craft signals all over its body are warm to the touch, but can become heated as they absorb external heat, such as when it basks on warm rocks, to turn that into fire energy. It's a solar-powered crocodile, and yes, I do mean solar-powered specifically, since solar energy turns light into heat, and that gets turned into energy, whereas solar voltaic is your effective photosynthesis of light directly to energy. Fuecoco is laid back and does things at its own pace. It enjoys eating and will rush towards any food it sees. As shown in Pokemon Sleep, it and its evolutions are known to sometimes sleep with one eye open, giving us the same reason as to why Totodile's line does it. And while asleep, it sometimes moves its mouth as if it's chewing, which this is a behavior called mouth gaping. This is how crocodiles release heat as they lack sweat glands. So this allowed them to evaporate moisture, and they effectively turn themselves into a radiator. Don't overthink this though in visual, as this is effectively the same thing that a dog does. Given its final evolution, the light color of its face may be inspired by the calavera design, commonly found in celebrations of the Mexican holiday, Dia de los Muertos, Day of the Dead. And while I am Puerto Rican and not Mexican, maybe a little bit of Spanish, I love the Day of the Dead inspirations we will be getting here in this line. I also just love bones, so, you know, what do you want from me? Fuecoco may also reference in some capacity the crocodile legends in the Iberian Peninsula, such as the Drac de la Coca, whose preserved body with an exposed skull may have inspired a skeletal appearance, and whose presence and pyrotechnical Quaquaval festivities may have inspired the fire typing. Legend has it, around the 17th century, a crocodile arrived in Mallorca, on a merchant ship. The crocodile survived through the sewers of the city, terrorizing the population, which called it a dragon. One day in 1676, while Bartolomeu Cock was going to meet his partner, Catalina Rosselló, on Carrera de la Portera, the dragon appeared. The knight, to defend the lady, took out the sword and killed him there. Then, the Cock Knight offered him to his partner, Coca, Cock's wife, as proof of his love. It may also be based on Cucafuera, otherwise just known as Coco, depicted as a crocodilian dragon creature with a round body. Coco is also the name of a female dragon who featured in various medieval celebrations in the Iberian Peninsula. In Portugal, one still survives in Moncayo. She fights in some sort of medieval tournament with St. George during the Corpus Christi celebrations. She is called Santa Coca, Saint Coca, an allusion to the Irish saint or Coca Rabicha, tailed Coca. If she defeats St. George by scaring the horse, there will be a bad year for the crops and famine. If the horse and St. George win by cutting off one of her ears with earring and her tongue, the crops will be fertile. Which, not for animal cruelty, and I think this is something that actually did stop, but I forgot to actually look into it. Oops. But people do cheer for Coca, because why not? You're supposed to cheer for the villain, and it's fun. Evolving into Croconaw, atop its head is an orange mass of fire energy shaped like a nest with yellow squares patterning in it. This nest contains a yellow glowing egg-shaped fireball on top, born out of Croconaw's fire energy and overflowing vitality. It can control the fireball, sending it out and using it for its moves. Said fireball on Croconaw's head never falls off though, even when the Pokemon sways rhythmically in its sleep. So of course the egg fits a full look to make it look like a sombrero, which, as a quick point, is just a word that means any hat with a brim. It's effectively a thing that casts shadow if you want a more literal translation, because sombra is part of that, and sombra is shadow. Back on track though, this egg within its nest sombrero is even more particular, as when viewed from above it looks like a flower, more specifically the Mexican marigold, which will then be used as part of Dia de los Muertos celebrations. Eggs are also used as part of this, though they are more properly called cascarones nowadays, as they are confetti-filled shells meant to bring joy, luck, and a little bit of chaos, as they are decorated and broken over people's heads. They are meant to further represent the cycle of life and honor the dead in their own way. In other words, through this, Pokemon's great joy of life and high energy, it created a life of its own all by itself. Moving forward, Croconaw's internal flame sac has a valve that connects to its vocal cords. As a result, Croconaw lets out guttural cries as it releases fire from its mouth. Its voice can hardly be described as beautiful. Moreover though, its voice becomes more destructive as it breathes more powerful fire. Its name in Japanese is Achigator, which is broken down to Achichi, the exclamation for if something is too hot, like when you eat it, Mariachi, and alligator, and that's perfect. Reaching its final form, we not only see Skeledirge, but a bird that has not only hatched from the nest, but is a full-on creature with a full-on soul, granting Skeledirge its ghost typing. And of course, this bird can be seen pecking at Skeledirge's teeth to clean said teeth. This relates to the mutualistic relationship between the ibis and the Nile crocodile, species that work together, as the ibis will clean the teeth of the crocodile, ridding it of parasites, while the ibis then gets a meal of its own. Now, this next part is entirely me waxing words here, but it would be interesting to see a full family of Skeledirge have a child, and there may have been an ibis Pokemon in the past who frequented the family. This ibis would eventually die, going completely extinct, and so instead of mourning, the family celebrated in their memory to never forget it. Now, the Fuecoco line may have partially forgotten why they do what they do, but they enjoy it anyway, and in turn, their joy and celebration brings back the ibis of their past, soul and all. This is what I would like to believe, and it would be pretty plausible with the stories that we see in Pokemon, and would be incredibly thematically fitting of Dia de los Muertos and remembering the ones that have fallen. Skeledirge has a meddlesome but caring personality. Its singing is gentle but powerful and full of vitality, capable of soothing the souls of all who hears it. Opponents hearing its singing will feel warm and fulfilled inside, losing their will to battle. Skeledirge burns its enemies by unleashing flames that exceed 5,400 Fahrenheit or 3,000 Celsius. When it sings, its bird transforms into a microphone, growing its foot longer until it reaches the ground. The bird is then powered up by Skeledirge's singing, growing larger and flying towards its opponents, or rather target. A passionate singer holding the mic stand, because you have to have all the stops pulled out for celebrations, and music is such a key thing to attach to our emotions and remember the past. It's kind of like Coco. When Skeledirge sleeps, the fiery bird on its head occasionally moves about and even plays pranks on it when its sleep is shallow. An excellent caretaker, it never gets angry no matter what's done to it and continues sleeping. Also admit that it does seem like a fiery little phoenix, which would be pretty fitting for this Pokemon in its full celebration of life, death, and the cycle of. On to our last fully confirmed information with our water starter, Quaxly. Quaxly's coif has a smooth feel thanks to the rich, moist cream that holds it. The cream it secretes can repel water and grime because, yeah, it's a duck. The reason why water does slide off of a duck's back is because they use their beaks to spread waxy oil from a gland on their rump over their feathers, creating a hydrophobic surface that helps with keeping them dry and buoyant. This is also why you should not be touching ducks barehanded. They have a lot of things that make us sick really easily, and I learned that firsthand while doing some duck research. Luckily, I did not get sick. The coif on Quaxly's head can become unkempt should it get dry. It is an earnest and tidy Pokemon and tends to overthink things. It hates getting itself dirty, especially its head. Its strong legs allow it to swim without issues, even in strong currents, and it also uses its legs to repeatedly kick its foes with swift speed. Although found in Paldea, they are not native to the region, instead having migrated from faraway places a long time ago. I've got an entire video on Pokemon migration for you to check out if you want more on that and many other Pokemon. Also have one on invasive species and the real homes of other Pokemon in the events that they didn't necessarily migrate. As mentioned in the sleep style decks, the coif on its head grows dry and messy should Quaxly sleep for a very long time. However, this tends to happen extremely rarely on occasions. It basically gets bedhead and doesn't wake back up is what I'm hearing. Quaxly appears to be based on a duckling of the crested domestic duck breed or the South American crested duck. Considering there is a Eurasian teal, we might have a pun there, and of course the blue feet immediately should make us think of the blue-footed booby. The crested breed of ducks was introduced from the Dutch East Indies and popularized in North America. Crested ducks and blue-footed boobies are native to South America, which would tie everything nicely together as to why it's here and used as an inspiration. As it evolves into Quaxwell, it's learning to dance more and more and starting to become a master at its craft while still having a long way to go. The crest above Quaxwell's head is capable of absorbing impacts and is used by it to shield itself from oncoming attacks. Doing this may mess up the crest, however, which causes its body and mind to feel unwell and weakened. If its crest becomes unkempt and messy, it will quickly use gel to comb it back into shape. Quaxwell has a serious, stoic personality, though it is also known to be temperamental. It learns and practices dance routines by observing the movements of people and Pokemon from various regions. It is a hard worker and constantly trains its strength and technique. Flocks of them train by running their legs through shallow waters, and then compete with each other for the most graceful of kicks, which they're basically doing a resistance training of sorts. There's effectively greater drag force within water, so if you can kick fast underwater, you can kick faster on land. And as mentioned in the sleep style decks, Quaxwell maintains its beautiful posture even while asleep. However, the daily training it maintains can occasionally leave it too tired to care for its coif. As a result, the coif is usually left messy as it sleeps. This is the passion for a Pokemon's craft, to eat, breathe, and sleep your craft no matter how tired you get, and to bring life into something new. This is wildly good timing because, man, this month I have been pushing it with more videos and streams and everything to really stress test things and put out my best. And I can heavily respect and relate to this right now. It's fun, it's challenging, I am getting less sleep, I am still eating well and exercising and so on and so forth, so don't worry. But man, does it take a lot of effort to be at maximum effort for weeks now. Now, Quaxwell has elements of performers for carnivals, such as the Rio Carnival or the Carnival of Santa Cruz de Tenerife in the Canary Islands. The cultural association between Anatids and carnivals could date to ancient Rome, where the crested goose was a sacred animal of the goddess Juno. Quaxwell's feathers and crest also look like a swimsuit and a swim cap, respectively. Thus, another possible inspiration could be synchronized swimming, which was also known as water ballet. Very fitting considering the poses that it makes and the fact that it is doing synchronized movements with others of its kind. Quacking Carnival Quaquaval, with all its glitz and glam that you would expect to see as it shows itself off in ways that may make you think of all sorts of Carnival dancers, which this in turn could relate it to a peacock thanks to the overall shape. I got caught between Spanish and English for a second there, and it really threw me off. In battle, Quaquaval is accompanied with a series of teardrop-shaped decorative water feathers, which are ejected from the organs on its tail feathers and fanned out behind its back. When attacking, these water feathers move forward and spin around Quaquaval's body, making a buzzsaw-like arrangement that it uses to slice into its enemies. Its legs are well-trained and have incredible strength, being able to launch a truck away with a single kick. It uses these legs to also perform dance moves, as we would expect, some of which appear to be based on dances from faraway lands, because of course, not only was it learning from people all over, but then this would also relate it specifically to Carnival dancers of the Carnival of Santa Cruz de Tenerife in the Canary Islands once more, which are fairly close to the Iberian Peninsula and are still considered part of Spain. And Paldea is very much a mix of the Iberian Peninsula, Spain, Mexican culture, and little bits and baubles of Spanish culture generally all over the place, or rather Hispanic culture, which is the correct way to talk about it, from all over the place, which is shown within the Pokemon, the food, the sayings, the things that people do say in general, structures in the world, so on and so forth. So this is no surprise, but it does give us some strong insight. It is noted Quaquaval is viewed by Serena as its rival, not the other way around, funny enough, because of course the two Pokemon with incredibly powerful kicks would be rivals. Now, Quaquaval's dances can mesmerize all those who see it. Even while Quaquaval is asleep, it has been seen swaying its whole body at every opportunity, and on occasion, a sleeping one has been seen striking elegant poses. No matter what, you must always be fabulous! Quaquaval has a cheerful and energetic disposition, dancing away no matter what situation it faces. However, it can also express a more serious demeanor, especially when it comes to consistently polishing its skills. It can become very focused during critical situations. And this honestly reminds me of people who, once again, are very serious about their craft when they are working and improving, but then know how to let loose and have fun outside of that. They work as hard as possible, and then they will play as hard as possible, maximizing their lives in both sectors. All of this could be distilled down to its relation specifically to the Battery Queens, or Drum Queens. They parade in front of the drama of a performance. They are the eternal queens of Carnival, and of course, they know how to make every step and beat full of life, giving us our Quaquaval here in its entirety. We can even dig into its fighting typing, typically being something of benevolence, of heroes, a martial art that you might associate it with, could go as far as capoeira, which was once used as a cover to train people to fight and escape their oppressors when they were forced to be slaves. In other words, it is a dance of freedom from Brazil, and there's a chance that Quaquaval may have escaped a predatory Pokemon in its homeland before migrating to Paldea. We have finally made it to the end where we have the Gen 10 starters. I will begin with the most directly given info and then speculate afterwards on each one. I'm going to be making the assumption that based on the land and sea, the overall general ecosystem we get a glimpse of, and even the structures, that we are most definitely in a region mainly inspired by Indonesia. It's important to remember that it will likely incorporate ideas from surrounding countries and related countries or subdivisions of Indonesia. This is why we get a general clumping of Hispanic traditions attached to the Iberian Peninsula that originate from outside of it within Paldea, so this could get really messy. I am not going to be using most suggestions from anyone or anything else because everything is speculative minus the most direct info that we have received. We begin with Brout, known as the Bean Chick Pokemon, which makes it easy to just call it a Pokemon based on chickpeas, already something that is not widely consumed in traditional Indonesia. So right off the bat, we already have two different directions we might be going. Mung beans would be the most often used if we don't also consider soybeans here. And personally, I think it's with soybeans that we find our culprit for its facial design. Brout has the same coloration, and when we look at the organization of their leaflets, we get a familiar composition in soybeans. It even has a brown opening that we could then relate to the little legs of Brout. It is stated directly that Brout uses its eyebrow leaves to photosynthesize. It is energetic and lively, but also rather clumsy. It's a toddler effectively, so there's no surprise there. What I will follow this up with is a visual of the kakapo, an endangered ground-dwelling creature that is called the owl parrot, though it is not native to Indonesia, but rather New Zealand. The two places having a strong and growing partnership since 1958 centered on economic cooperation, education, and regional security, making inspirations between the two more and more likely. This would also explain Brout's owl-like appearance. It would mirror Rowlet in multiple ways, as it is now diurnal rather than nocturnal, and the facial patterns with the kakapo would match well too. But of course, nothing ever stays as is, and we have to ask where this evolution could bring us. On one hand, we can go hard in the sauce as everyone expects and slide into the legends and religion of Indonesia, allowing us to dig into the Garuda, who is represented by an eagle. More specifically, we have a literal animal called a Garuda, who even has the same head crest that we partially see on Brout. I will actually say now, though, that there is one source I am willing to consider from an individual known as Ray, who is Indonesian and shared their crash course thoughts on what we could be getting. I dug a little bit deeper, of course, and looked around so that way I could see if our thoughts matched up. Now, we'll get to the other two, but as we know, Pokemon never just takes one inspiration. And with not only the kakapo, but also the Garuda, I want to introduce one other very famous bird in these islands, and that would be the bird of paradise. Birds of paradise in Indonesia are iconic, highly ornamental birds found mainly in the rainforest of Papua, Raja Ampat, and the Maluku Islands, known for the male's vibrant, long plumage and dramatic courtship displays. Species like the red bird of paradise and greater bird of paradise are endemic to this region. They are crucial symbols of Papua's biodiversity. In other words, our little grass Pokemon will start out as a clumsy little Pokemon, but then evolve into not a flying type, but potentially a fighting type, as it learns to dance similarly to Oricorio and Quaquaval. It will still get those massive tufts that Garuda has, though since they've already drawn a lot of attention to its eyebrow, we might even see it grow into a beautiful flower that then crests back in some capacity. Moving on to Pombon, we have a Pomeranian, and it even has a little fire kanji on its paw, which is incredibly adorable. There isn't a single thought behind those eyes, let me tell you, and it is all the better for it. It is just the puppy Pokemon, and inside Pombon's lungs is an organ that generates heat, which causes the red area on its chest to glow slightly. Pombon is described to have an innocent, friendly temperament. So we kind of have a couple different things going on here, as they draw attention to the red chest, which they say is glowing, but then we also have red paw pads and a red swirl at the top of the head. A province of Indonesia is Bali, who has the tradition of the Barong, a king of spirits, goodness, and protection. They have a whole dance that you have seen before as we look at Hisuian Arcanine as an inspiration. In fact, there would be a very strong chance that Growlithe and this Pokemon are related because the Barong would be part of its inspiration as we get the transformation of it through cultures into what is the Komainu, as I talked about earlier. But while I would love for this to reach a fairy typing like everyone else has suspected, something feels off about that. Something feels way too easy for us to wish for that. Think of it this way, it has to have some capability of going underground, or at least avoiding or resisting water in general to survive in a place like this, assuming it even is native to this region. And if we really want to tie it into Arcanine, who has its Hisuian form, we have Fire, Fire Rock, we could maybe go into Fire Steel. Its face strongly reminds me of a shield as we see with Zacian, but it still feels off for that. And this is when I realized Pumpkin, as its name in Japanese is, has a little paintbrush at the top of its head, potentially making its face a sort of color palette. As a side, I have a very strong feeling that this generation is a way to renew everything that Pokopia happened before this, and this is a generation that will renew the entire world of Pokemon, a reset of sorts, and this would be a fantastic little nod towards Pallet Town. I have no real idea exactly where to take Pombon in terms of speciation, but if we want to go wild with it, I might just say that it'll become an armored, Fire Steel type Pokemon that decorates itself heavily, allowing it to take on the visual representation of the Barong stronger. It would even allow it to resist water, making it neutral, but making the fighting typing of Grout effective, or at least its final evolution, making a full switcheroo on how the types may typically function. I will actually say now, I'm willing to bet that Pombon would evolve into a partial Kintamani, otherwise nicknamed the Indonesian Bali Dog, who also get their tiger stripes, giving us something similar to what we saw in Incineroar. It would give a connection to the extinct Bali tiger and provide some deeper connections to the culture and history, and I just realized now I wrote all 3 of these, as you will soon find out, as accidental connections to the Pokemon we see in Alola. Oops. And I guess that would really make Gekwa the wild card, as it becomes a water fairy type to even out the finality of this trio, very much like what we saw with Primarina. This seems so unlikely, honestly, but let's be real. It's all fun and speculation at this point, and there's some potential to it, really. Gekwa has a short and bulbous tail which it uses to launch springy balls of water. It has an intelligent, shrewd, and haughty personality, and we could easily dig into the story of the Naga for this and how it and Garuda fought, which would even allow us to see how the tables have been flipped with these new typings that I am suggesting, but there's a bit more to this. Rather than dipping into the dragon aspect or even immediately associating it with the psychic types for intelligence, I want to look at its demeanor, its skill, and how Pokemon does enjoy flipping that script. So I'm definitely doubling down and confirming it'll become a water fairy, but also still agree with others that it may become a Komodo dragon. And you ask why? Well, Komodo dragon blood was once being studied and processed to help us create new antibodies, something we can relate to the idea of health, to life, and this is something that relates to both the fairy typing and water typing. Not only is water seen as a giver of life, the source of life, but when we look at fairy types, many of them can access the flow of life directly. They don't access it through spirits, but rather through the literal essence itself, like we see with Galarian Ponyta. Gekwa will become a wild, bacteria-spitting Komodo dragon that has the capacity to heal others through its bite and its projective saliva that it will have. But what are your thoughts? What do you think are going to happen with these final starter Pokemon within Generation 10? Also, do you think this could be a quote-unquote soft reset of the Pokemon world? That maybe this does occur after Pokopia? I will do a video on Pokopia soon-ish. I just have to beat the game and then do a bunch of extra stuff first, so we'll see what happens there. But that's effectively everything. If you enjoyed, and especially if you're new here, please do make sure that you do subscribe. Let me know your thoughts, and share the video with others. Hype the video up. I would love to see more people's thoughts on this, and of course, it helps the channel overall. In addition, last week's best comment is a nice and short one from Alexa, which is, what is a mob to a king? What is a king to a god? What is a god to a pair? When I had done a post talking about the fact that I need to edit down the Chikorita only run of Legends EA. Not a Bayleef, not a Meganium, no Megas used, except where I was absolutely forced to do so. And otherwise, it's just a Chikorita fighting the world. It's just, it was a headache. I do need to edit that down at some point, put it on the channel. It'll be a short video. I hope you guys end up enjoying it. And if you enjoyed this video so much that you'd like to go the extra mile, become a member on here or Patreon for as little as $3 a month. You get behind-the-scenes info, early access to videos, and members-only videos. With the next one being about my rankings of all the different evil teams, breaking them down a little bit, and why some of them deserve a little bit more love than others, honestly, or more love than they actually get. But with that then, as always, thank you so much for watching. Don't do anything I wouldn't do. Don't do anything I would do. Please be nice to each other. I love you, and I'll see you next time.